Hey guys. Well, let's begin. Tonight we step barefoot onto the blazing sands of ancient Egypt. The air is already thick with heat, as though you're walking inside a giant dry oven. The horizon ripples with waves of distortion under the punishing gaze of the sun god Ra. There's no gentle morning breeze. The sky above is cloudless, stretching infinitely, daring you to find shade where there is none. Your skin prickles as the heat radiates from every direction. Even the ground beneath your feet radiates back yesterday's scorching sun. You take a step forward, the sand shifting and swallowing your feet slightly. It clings to your sweat-slicked skin like a coarse exfoliant you never asked for. To be honest, you probably won't survive this. The ancient Egyptians did, but barely. So, before the lights go out, click like and subscribe, but only if you're brave enough to return tomorrow night. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. I want to see. I want to see who's risking sleep deprivation with me tonight. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan, because silence makes this story worse, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You squint as the light burns your eyes. There are no sunglasses, no sunscreen. Unless you count a mixture of crocodile dung and oil, which, yes, some believe was actually used. Historians still argue whether it works protection, or was just an act of devotion to the gods. Either way, it smells exactly how you'd expect. You stumble toward the riverbank, hoping for some relief. The Nile glistens invitingly, but you know better than to dive in. The water teems with unseen dangers, bilharzia parasites, crocodiles lurking just beneath the surface, and giant hippos known for capsizing boats and crushing unlucky swimmers. The heat makes your mouth dry as papyrus scrolls, but the price of drinking might be even higher. Around you, other labourers are already at work. They wear simple white linen kilts, sweating profusely, but at least they're not completely naked under this inferno. The linen's lightness offers minimal comfort, more a symbol of decency than a functional piece of clothing. You're wearing one too, tied haphazardly around your waist. The occasional breeze feels like the breath of a tired hairdryer. Your feet burn through thin sandals, if you're lucky enough to have sandals. Many don't. The sand is littered with sharp stones that slice into tender skin. The work supervisors bark orders in a language that sounds rhythmic, almost musical, but sharp enough to carry authority. You don't fully understand every word yet, but you catch the tone. "Move faster," it says. "Stop complaining." The smell of sweat, fish, dung, and fresh-cut papyrus mingles into a perfume only ancient Egypt could produce. It's oddly comforting after a while, until you realize your nose has simply given up trying to protest. Flies hover persistently around your face, landing on your eyes, your nostrils, your lips. The locals have grown adept at waving them away with casual flicks, barely noticing. You, however, flail like an amateur, your every swat only drawing more attention from the tiny tormentors. A group of men walks by, carrying baskets of mud and straw to a construction site. They chant as they work, trying to keep rhythm, trying to distract themselves from the relentless heat. You notice their teeth worn down, chipped, some missing entirely. That's the price of bread made with stone-ground flour that inevitably picks up bits of grit. Every bite slowly grinds away at their enamel. No dentists, no toothbrushes. A simple toothache can turn deadly in this world. The horizon glows a pale gold as the sun climbs higher, turning your linen into a damp, clinging rag. Sweat runs freely down your back, soaking into the waistband. You feel lightheaded. Your stomach churns. Dehydration creeps in quickly here, and the faint promise of water is never far enough to be safe, but always too risky to trust. You glance toward a tall, ornate structure rising above the fields, a temple dedicated to Isis. Priests and priestesses walk calmly inside, their shaved heads glistening under the sun. They carry offerings bags of figs, loaves of honey bread, jars of beer. The temple smells of incense, not sweat. Life inside those walls must be easier, but it's a closed world, reserved for a select few who have memorized complex rituals and strict codes of purity. You wonder if you could survive their strict routines. Honestly, compared to this heat, ritual baths might actually sound appealing. Just then, a dust devil swirls to life nearby, tossing sand into your face and stinging your eyes. You cough, trying to clear your throat, which feels like you've been gargling sawdust. The supervisor shouts again. You're expected to start your shift soon. There's no time to linger. As you move, you pass a small shrine built for Tauret, the hippo goddess of childbirth and protection. Someone has left a tiny clay hippo figure beside it, hoping for safe delivery of a child. The superstition feels quaint now, but you know better than to scoff. In a world where modern medicine doesn't exist, you take any divine backup you can get. You finally reach the worksite, a section of the royal tomb complex under construction. Giant limestone blocks sit ready to be moved, their sheer size mocking your small, mortal body. Ramps made of mud brick snake up toward the half-finished walls. Teams of workers loop thick ropes around the stones, while others prepare logs to roll them forward. A foreman with a carved wooden staff watches your every move. His wide-brimmed reed hat offers him shade you can only dream of. In the distance, a priest begins chanting a hymn to Ra, asking for mercy and strength. You mouth the words too, not because you believe, but because you're desperate. The chant rises like heat waves off the sand, and as your day of labour begins, you can't help but wonder how many of your companions will make it through without collapse. Your stomach growls as the sun climbs higher. You've been at it for hours, hauling, pushing, sweating. The promise of breakfast is all that keeps your legs moving. Finally, a shrill whistle blows. A brief break. You shuffle toward the communal eating area, where the workers gather under a flimsy reed canopy that barely filters the sunlight. The meal is waiting. Well, if you can call it that. Coarse, heavy loaves of bread sit in clay bowls. The bread is dense, almost rock-like. As you pick one up, the rough surface scrapes your fingers. Biting into it feels like chewing gravel, which, technically, you are. See, the flour is ground on large stone slabs, and tiny bits of quartz and grit get mixed in. Every bite sands down your teeth like slow, deliberate torture. This bread is often called dental death, though, to be fair, nobody here has coined that exact term. Historians just love giving it colourful nicknames. Next to the bread is a small bowl of onions. Their pungent, sharp aroma wafts through the air, mixing with the ever-present scent of sweat and Nile mud. Onions are not just food, they're medicine, currency, even part of workers' wages. You peel one with sticky fingers, the juice running down your hand as you take a bite. It's sharp enough to make your eyes water again, though that could also be the sand still stuck in them. There's beer, too. Well, beer in the loosest sense. It's a cloudy, chonky, porridge-like brew. Not exactly what you'd want after a long day, but surprisingly refreshing when there's no clean water. The alcohol level is low, but the nutrients help replace what you've sweated out. You sip carefully, trying not to think about the occasional floating bit of debris. Historians still argue whether ancient Egyptian beer was floatingly tolerated as the safer alternative to water. You sit on the ground, legs crossed awkwardly, as other labourers chatter in low, tired voices. The younger ones play a quick game, tossing small carved knuckle bones like ancient dice. Laughter rings out a rare moment of levity in this brutal life. You allow yourself a thin smile. Even here, people find small joys. A few feet away, a man starts coughing, a deep, rattling sound that won't stop. The others glance at him, then quickly look away. Respiratory issues are common. The constant dust, mixed with smoke from cooking fires, wears down lungs over time. Nobody wants to get too close. Not because of fear, well, maybe a little, but because illness means weakness. And weakness means you might be replaced, permanently. Nearby, an overseer walks among the workers. His sharp eyes scan for anyone slacking off. His staff taps the ground with a rhythmic thunk, like a metronome of authority. You quickly take another bite of the bread, pretending to savour it. The overseer nods and moves on. You exhale softly. That was close. The break is short, too short. Soon, the whistle blows again. You stand, joints popping, and trudge back toward the worksite. Your feet feel like heavy stones, your mouth still dry despite the gritty beer. The sun is now directly overhead, casting the few remaining shadows into sharp, thin slivers. As you return to the limestone ramp, you notice a strange scene unfolding nearby. A man has approached a travelling healer, a wandering practitioner, offering questionable remedies from a small wooden box. The healer pulls out a mixture of crushed herbs, honey, and what looks suspiciously like animal fat. He mutters incantations under his breath, invoking the goddess Sekhmet for healing. The patient watches with wide, desperate eyes. You raise an eyebrow. Medical practices here are a strange blend of natural remedies and supernatural hope. Historians still debate how effective these treatments were, though some remedies, like honey for wounds, actually had antibacterial properties. Others, well, let's just say the crocodile dung sunscreen isn't exactly recommended by modern dermatologists. As you watch, a nearby child chases after a lizard, laughing as it darts across the sand. The innocence is almost jarring amidst the exhausting adult world. You follow the lizard's path for a moment and catch a glimpse of a sacred ibis wading by the Nile's edge, its long beak probing the water. These birds are revered here, sacred to Thoth, god of wisdom and writing. You wonder, briefly, if their calm lives feel as brutal as yours. A sudden shout snaps you back to your own reality. One of the ropes around a limestone block has frayed and snapped. The massive stone lurches dangerously. Workers scatter as the block tilts and slams into the muddy ramp with a sickening thud. The overseer's face darkens. Accidents like this mean delays. Delays mean punishments. You swallow hard and silently thank whichever god might be listening that you weren't standing close. Another worker wasn't so lucky. His leg caught beneath a splintered wooden roller. He groans in pain as a few men rush to pull him free. The injury looks bad. In this world, a crushed limb often spells the end of your usefulness. You shudder, imagining yourself in his place. The foreman signals for work to resume immediately. There's no time for sympathy here. Every moment is precious when you're building a pharaoh's tomb. After all, the dead king's journey to the afterlife waits for no one. Your hands grip the coarse rope again. The fibres bite into your palms as you strain with the others to reposition the massive stone. Muscles scream in protest. Sweat drips from your chin, but you dare not let go. The sun bears down mercilessly, turning your skin into a hot, stretched canvas. In the distance, the Nile sparkles under the midday light, deceptively beautiful. You wonder how many lives it has claimed, how many more it will. The mighty river gives life, and takes it away just as easily. You've heard stories of hippos overturning boats, crocodiles snapping unsuspecting fishermen from shorelines. Nature here isn't romantic, it's ruthless. Finally, with a chorus of grunts and shouts, the stone shifts back into place. The foreman nods approvingly, and a brief murmur of relief ripples through the workers. You don't celebrate, though. You know the day is far from over. The chant of the temple priests floats faintly across the fields again, carried by the breeze. They sing to Maat, goddess of balance and order, hoping for harmony in a world where so little feels stable. You whisper the words under your breath. Whether you believe or not doesn't matter. In this brutal, burning land, a little divine favour can't hurt. The sun doesn't let up, but you're learning its cruel rhythm. It moves slowly across the sky, offering no mercy. But at least you know the worst will ease as evening approaches. For now, though, you keep working. The linen sticking to your back is practically part of your skin at this point. You pause briefly to adjust your head covering, a simple piece of cloth that's more symbolic than useful. It shields your scalp just enough to prevent direct burns, but does little against the radiating heat. Fashion here isn't about looking good, it's about surviving the elements. Every choice is a compromise. Linen is light, breathable, and relatively cheap, but it offers almost no protection against the sun's full fury, or the wind's sharp bite. As you pass a group of artisans carving elaborate reliefs into the temple walls, you catch a glimpse of their tools. Copper chisels, wooden mallets, and flint blades. The images they're creating depict gods, pharaohs, and daily life freezing this moment in time for eternity. You marvel at the precision, especially considering the simple tools they are using. Historians still argue how some of the finer details were achieved. Steady hands, endless patience, or perhaps techniques lost to time. One artisan glances up, his face streaked with dust and sweat, but his smile is genuine. He motions to the figure he's working on, a depiction of Hathor, goddess of love, beauty, and motherhood. You nod appreciatively, and for a moment there's a quiet understanding between you. Even in this harsh world, beauty finds a way to bloom. Not far from the worksite, you notice a small group of women gathered beneath a canopy, grinding cosmetics. The grinding stones clink rhythmically as they prepare a greenish-black powder, malachite mixed with galena, the base for kohl eyeliner. Makeup here isn't vanity, it's survival. The thick, dark lines around their eyes protect them from the blinding glare, deter flies, and may even help prevent eye infection. You catch your reflection in a polished piece of copper and see the smudged kohl around your own eyes. It's smeared from sweat, but it does help. Nearby, a young girl applies perfumed oil to her skin, blending myrrh and frankincense into the mixture. The scent momentarily cuts through the ever-present odour of labour and livestock. For the elite, these oils are luxury. For labourers like you, they're rare. If you're lucky, you might get a drop or two during festival days. A merchant strolls by, leading a skinny donkey loaded with baskets of dried dates, figs, and salted fish. His voice rises in a practiced chant, advertising his wares to passing temple staff. You eye the figs longingly. Their sweet stickiness would be a welcome change from gritty bread, but you know better than to approach without coin or goods to trade. Food distribution for workers like you is strictly managed. Anything extra is a luxury few can afford. Suddenly, a shout from behind draws your attention. A group of boys is playing near the edge of the worksite, tossing small balls made of tightly wrapped papyrus. One boy stumbles, narrowly avoiding a sharp limestone fragment. An older worker grabs him by the arm and scolds him sharply. Children are precious here, but discipline is swift. A careless injury could mean lifelong disability, or worse, no life at all. As you turn back to your work, you catch sight of something shimmering in the distance. An ostrich feather headdress bobbing above the crowd. A noblewoman is being carried in a shaded litter by several strong men. She glides past like an ethereal vision, shielded from the sun by a canopy of embroidered linen. Her skin glistens with oil, and her jewellery flashes in the harsh-lit gold, lapis lazuli, turquoise. The stark contrast between her world and yours hits you like a slap. She enjoys delicacies from faraway lands, honey from Nubia, wine from the Levant, exotic perfumes from Punt. You're lucky if your beer doesn't have extra floaters in it. The elite dine on roast duck and fresh fruits while you gnaw on onion and coarse bread. It's enough to make you laugh. Quietly, bitterly. Still, even the nobles aren't immune to the dangers of this world. Rumours swirl of political intrigue, jealous rivals, and angry priests. Whispers suggest that even highborn women must navigate dangerous power games behind the palace walls. Historians still argue whether noble women wielded significant influence or lived as gilded prisoners under the pharaoh's rule. As the day drags on, you catch glimpses of strange daily rituals. A scribe carefully unrolls a fresh papyrus scroll, dipping his reed pen into black ink made from soot and water. His job isn't physically demanding, but his sharp mind must keep track of grain tallies, tax records, and workforce rosters. The scribes are the ones who hold real power here. Without them, the entire system grinds to a halt. Literacy is a privilege reserved for a small elite, and you can't help but envy their clean hands and shaded workspaces. A nearby priest approaches the scribes, carrying a small offering of bread and beer. His white linen robe billows slightly as the wind picks up, carrying with it the faint scent of incense from the temple. The priest's head is clean-shaven, a sign of ritual purity. His duties include not only tending to the gods, but also overseeing many aspects of civic life, resource allocation, temple property, even legal matters. In some ways, the priests wield more power than the pharaoh's soldiers. You squint as a fresh gust of wind stirs up a cloud of fine sand. The grains sting your face and eyes, clinging to every sweaty surface like an unwanted second skin. You're starting to understand why so much of Egyptian daily life revolves around mitigating discomfort. Even simple tasks, walking, eating, breathing, are battles against the elements. Finally, a second whistle blows, signalling the end of your shift. You stagger back toward the workers' quarters, your legs trembling. The long, low brick huts provide basic shelter from the heat, though the interiors are stifling. You collapse onto a straw mat, savouring the relative stillness as your heartbeat slowly calms. Above you, the sky is starting to shift. The intense blue fades into streaks of orange and pink. The sun may rule the day, but night belongs to other forces entirely. Cool breezes, star-strewn skies, and creatures that thrive in the dark. You close your eyes for a moment, but you know rest won't come easily. Not with the scorpions that lurk in the cracks of the walls. Not with the mosquitoes already whining at your ears. And certainly not with the knowledge that tomorrow will be just as punishing as today. The evening breeze offers a slight reprieve as you sit outside your cramped mud brick hut, trying to cool down. The wind carries the scent of distant cooking fires, charred fish, and the sweet smoky aroma of burning myrrh. Around you, the workers' village hums with quiet activity as night descends. But even now, you feel the weight of heat radiating from the baked earth beneath your feet, as if the ground itself is reluctant to release the day's punishment. Your linen tunic clings to your body, still damp with sweat, and the salty residue itches at your skin. You scratch absent-mindedly as you watch your neighbours prepare for the night. Women kneel beside small fires, stirring thick vegetable stews in clay pots. The children's laughter echoes softly, a rare moment of joy before the world turns truly dangerous. Your stomach rumbles. Supper tonight is stew made of lentils, leeks, and dried fish, thickened with barley. It's filling enough to keep you alive, but not exactly a feast. You dip your bread into the pot, softening its gritty texture slightly. The bread still grinds against your teeth like sandpaper, but hunger makes you tolerant. Above you, the stars start to emerge, piercing the darkening sky one by one, like tiny gods taking their watchposts. The ancient Egyptians see powerful deities in these stars. Orion as Osiris, Sirius as the goddess Sopdet. You remember the stories whispered by the older workers, how the annual rising of Sirius foretells the Nile's life-giving flood. Without that flood, none of this, no temples, no fields, no lives, would exist. But tonight, there is no water rising, just the dry winds and the ever-present threats that come with nightfall. You hear the first shrill cry of a jackal somewhere, beyond the village perimeter. The workers glance toward the darkness instinctively. Jackals roam these outskirts freely, scavenging for scraps. The creatures are also sacred to Anubis, god of the dead, their sleek black shapes eerily linked to the world beyond life. You feel a prickling at your ankle. A mosquito. You slap it away, but you know it won't be the last. Swarms rise with the cool air, hungry for exposed skin. The bite itches immediately, and you curse under your breath. Historians still argue whether the ancient Egyptians fully grasped the diseases carried by these insects, like malaria and filariasis, but they certainly understood suffering. In an effort to ward off both insects and evil spirits, your neighbour lights a small brazier of smouldering herbs. The smoke curls lazily, mixing with the scent of garlic hanging from doorways, an all-purpose charm believed to keep both earthly pests and unseen forces at bay. You find yourself leaning toward the smoke, grateful for the temporary reprieve from buzzing tormentors. You shuffle toward the sleeping quarters, careful to shake out your bed mat. Scorpions love to find cozy hiding places, and tonight you're especially vigilant. One sting from a large enough scorpion could mean a slow, agonizing death if untreated. They're everywhere in this world, even inside your rolled linen. You've already heard whispers about one of the workers who didn't check his mat last week. The hut is stifling inside, but you can't sleep fully exposed outside either. Too many risks. Snakes slither freely here, horned vipers especially, their sand-coloured bodies blending perfectly with the earth. You remember the cautionary tales from your first day. Always check your shoes, always shake your clothes, never reach blindly into shadows. You've taken them to heart. As you lie on your thin mat, trying to find a cool spot, you hear a rustle near the doorway. A stray cat pads softly across the threshold. Cats are more than pets here. They're sacred protectors, believed to ward off snakes and evil spirits alike. You welcome its presence silently, watching its graceful silhouette as it prowls for rodents. The sleek animal glances at you with disinterested eyes before slipping into the shadows once more. Outside, the soft drumming of priests echoes faintly from the temple, part of the nightly ritual to honor the gods. You can't see the sacred fires from here, but you can imagine them, flickering orange against the sandstone walls, rising smoke curling into the dark heavens. You whisper a quiet prayer to Bastet, goddess of protection, hoping the night will pass without incident. Your eyes grow heavy, but your mind remains alert. This land doesn't allow deep sleep easily. Every rustle, every breeze feels like a potential threat. You roll over, adjusting your thin linen sheet. At least the worst of the heat has passed. A gentle hum rises from nearby reeds, blending with the chirps of unseen insects. Somewhere, frogs croak softly. The Nile's edge is never fully silent. Life pulses even in the darkest hours, whether you want it to or not. Your mind drifts as you imagine the nobles in their cool stone villas, resting on soft cushions, their servants fanning them gently. Their evenings involve scented baths with perfumed oils, music from harpists, and cups of imported wine. You sigh quietly. Your world of sweat, grit, and cautious rest feels impossibly far removed from theirs. And yet even their lives hold no true safety. Court intrigue, betrayal, and divine whims could topple a noble overnight. You've heard stories of banished officials, disgraced wives, and priests mysteriously falling ill. Survival here is a game everyone plays, regardless of status. Historians still debate whether the elaborate rituals and offerings truly appeased the gods, or if they merely offered a fragile illusion of control. As your body finally begins to relax, a cool breeze filters through a small gap in the mud brick wall. You savor it, breathing deeply. For a moment, the world feels almost peaceful. The stars blink steadily above, the temple chants fade into the distance, and the gentle sounds of night creatures lull you towards sleep. But deep down you know, when dawn breaks, the sun will rise with the same unrelenting force, and you'll face it all over again. Morning breaks with a vengeance. The thin slice of coolness you barely enjoyed during the night vanishes the moment Raw's first golden rays spill over the horizon. You awaken to the distant calls of temple priests, already invoking the gods as the village stirs from uneasy sleep. The heat hasn't yet peaked, but it's coming. You can feel it building in the air like a great beast stretching after slumber. You roll up your mat, shaking it one more time, just in case, and step outside. The ground is still cool beneath your feet, though you know that won't last long. Around you, neighbours are already at work. Some tend small vegetable plots beside the huts, growing onions, garlic, leeks and melons in thin strips of fertile earth near irrigation channels. Others prepare simple breakfast. Today is different, though. As you gather your tools for another day of back-breaking labour, a scribe arrives at the village centre. He carries a rolled papyrus scroll and wears a crisp, spotless linen robe that practically glows in the morning light. The chatter around you fades as he begins reading names aloud. Your stomach tightens. This isn't a casual visit. Today, the scribe declares, new workers will be assigned to assist in the hauling of stones for Pharaoh's tomb. You swallow hard. This is worse than usual labour. Hauling massive limestone blocks up ramps under the merciless sun is exhausting at best and lethal at worst. Those selected will work directly beneath the royal overseers, whose patience rivals that of a hungry crocodile. As your name is called, you feel a dozen eyes shift toward you. There's no protest, no appeal. You simply nod, grab your rope harness, and follow the others as they form a line. The group marches toward the construction site under the watchful gaze of the overseers. One of them, an older man with deeply tanned skin and a sharp, sunburned nose, eyes you carefully. His wooden staff taps against his thigh as he walks beside the line, his expression unreadable. You know your task. Work steadily, don't fall behind, and for the gods' sake, don't collapse. Those who falter are replaced quickly and often permanently. You've heard whispers about workers who were too injured to continue, left to fend for themselves, begging outside temple gates, or worse, disappearing entirely. As you approach the massive ramps, you see the colossal stone blocks glistening faintly with sweat-like moisture, the result of an early morning dousing to reduce friction during movement. Teams are already in position, pulling thick ropes looped around wooden sledges. The chanting begins, a rhythmic chant designed to coordinate the pulling effort. Heave, pull, heave, pull. You join a team, gripping the rough rope with raw, calloused hands. The fibers dig into your palms as you fall into rhythm. Muscles strain with every step, your sandals digging into the mud brick ramp to keep your footing. The sun climbs higher with each pull, and soon your linen clings to your body like a soaked rag. A priest watches nearby, mumbling prayers to Ptah, the god of craftsmen and builders. His role is as spiritual supervisor, ensuring the gods remain pleased. Every aspect of this work is steeped in ritual. The orientation of the tomb, the alignment with celestial bodies, the offerings made before each shift. Historians still debate how much of this was religious devotion and how much was clever motivation. It's certainly one way to ensure obedience. Your muscles scream in protest as the sled finally reaches the top of the incline. The block settles into place with a low, satisfying thunk. The overseer nods once, then gestures for you to rejoin the team for another round. There's no rest. As you trudge back down the ramp, your foot brushes against a large, flat stone embedded in the pathway. You stumble slightly but recover quickly. The worker behind you whispers, "That's the offering stone." You glance down. Sure enough, a small pile of broken amulets, shells and beads rests in the hollow dip. Workers often leave small tokens here. You don't have an offering with you, but your gaze lingers on the pile for a moment longer than necessary. In a world like this, any scrap of good fortune feels worth pursuing. Nearby, a group of men carries large ceramic jars filled with water mixed with natron salt. This mixture is poured on the path to create a slippery film that eases the sled's movement. The technique is simple yet ingenious. Historians continue to argue whether this practice was widespread or reserved for particularly heavy stones, but today you're grateful for any help, however small. As you continue hauling, the sun rises higher, and the heat intensifies. The air shimmers visibly, distorting the distant figures of priests and nobles watching from shaded platforms. Occasionally, a gust of hot wind carries the sharp scent of cedar resin burning at the nearby temple, mixing oddly with the sweat and dust clinging to your skin. During a brief water break, you sit on a low stone, panting heavily. Your fingers ache from gripping the rope. You pour a small cup of barley beer into your mouth, grateful for the lukewarm, murky brew. It soothes your parched throat just enough to continue. A younger worker beside you mutters under his breath, "Next week, they say, we start moving granite." You wince at the thought. Granite is even heavier, imported from quarries far to the south. Moving those stones requires double the effort and double the danger. As if summoned by your dread, you hear the distinct sound of an approaching noble entourage. The workers instinctively straighten their backs and lower their heads. A high-ranking official approaches, shaded by attendants holding ornate palm leaf fans. His jewellery glitters under the sun, a heavy collar of gold and turquoise that would pay for several years' worth of your measly wages. The noble surveys the progress with narrowed eyes. His voice cuts through the air like a blade. The Pharaoh expects this tomb ready before the flood season. Delay is not an option. The overseer bows deeply. "Yes, my lord." The noble sniffs dismissively and moves on, leaving a trail of dust in his wake. You exhale slowly, muscles tensing involuntarily. The weight of expectation is as crushing as the stones you haul. As the afternoon heat peaks, your vision begins to swim. Black spots dance before your eyes. You press your palm to your forehead, feeling the heat radiate from your own skull. One of the priests notices and quickly waves a small bundle of cooling herbs under your nose. A mixture of mint and lotus petals. The scent clears your head, if only slightly. Priest murmurs softly, "Strong today, weak tomorrow. Pace yourself." You nod wordlessly, grateful for even that small moment of mercy. And then it's back to work. Always back to work. Because in ancient Egypt, there's no real pause. Only the relentless beat of the sun, the endless pull of the rope, and the hope that you'll still be standing when the day finally ends. The sun dips lower now, though it still radiates with the cruel insistence of a fire god. Your body moves almost mechanically, one foot forward, one breath drawn, one rope pull after another. You're long past exhaustion. This is survival on instinct. The air hums with the chants of the priests, punctuated by the grunts of workers and the occasional barked order from an overseer. The massive stone finally settles into place, marking the last pull for the day. As you step back, swaying slightly, your gaze drifts upward to the partially finished tomb looming before you. The entrance is flanked by towering pylons, their surfaces already carved with intricate hieroglyphs, detailing the pharaoh's divine lineage. Artisans, standing on precarious wooden scaffolds, etch the likeness of Horus watching protectively over the eternal resting place. Historians still argue whether these depictions served primarily as religious symbols or political propaganda, meant to remind the living of the pharaoh's godlike authority. The overseer's whistle pierces the air, signalling the end of your shift. You stagger toward the village once more, shoulders aching, mouth dry. But instead of returning directly to your hut, you're pulled toward a small gathering forming near the temple's edge. Curious, you edge closer. A funeral procession winds slowly through the dusty street. The mourners chant mournfully, their voices low, steady like a heartbeat for the dead. At the centre of the procession lies a wrapped body. The deceased, tightly bound in linen, face painted in bright colours to resemble Osiris, lord of the underworld. You pause, suddenly hyper-aware of your own fragile existence. Death in Egypt isn't an end, it's a journey, but one that requires extensive preparation. The richer the family, the more elaborate the funeral. This procession belongs to a minor noble, not a pharaoh, but wealthy enough to afford proper mummification. As the priests continue their chant, you hear the words calling upon Anubis to guide the soul through Duat, the perilous underworld. The mourners wail in unison. This isn't just grief, it's ritual. Every step follows tradition, because any mistake could offend the gods and endanger the deceased's afterlife. You follow the procession for a bit, curious about what happens next. The body will be taken into the Webet, the purification tent, where embalmers, wearing jackal-headed masks to honour Anubis, begin the grim task of preparing it for eternity. The embalmers are highly trained, but not exactly gentle. You've heard rumours of their tools, long, thin metal hooks used to extract the brain through the nose, sharp flint blades to make clean incisions along the abdomen. The organs, liver, stomach, lungs, intestines will be removed, cleaned, and placed in canopic jars. Each jar bears the head of a protective deity. Human-headed Imsati for the liver, baboon-headed Hapi for the lungs, jackal-headed Umutef for the stomach, and falcon-headed Cube Zenifer for the intestines. Even your insides need divine protection in the afterlife. Historians still debate how much the average Egyptian truly understood about the embalming process. For the common people, much of this was veiled in mystery, reserved for priests and specialists. You shudder at the thought of your own body laid open, carefully disassembled for eternal preservation. As the procession continues, you notice several children watching wide-eyed from behind their mother's skirts. For them, this is not terrifying, but familiar. Death is part of life here, woven into every festival, every harvest, every sunrise. The cycle of existence, life, death and rebirth is as dependable as the Nile's annual flood. Suddenly you hear a soft voice beside you. An elderly woman, her skin like worn leather, whispers, "May his heart be light, child." You nod solemnly, the weighing of the heart. You know the story well. After death, the deceased faces judgment in the hall of Ma'at. Anubis places the heart on one side of the scale and the feather of truth on the other. If the heart is heavy with sin, Amit, part crocodile, part lion, part hippopotamus, devours it, ending the soul's journey forever. If balanced, the soul joins Osiris in the field of reeds, a paradise of endless harvest and You glance at the wrapped body once more. Even in death, survival is never guaranteed. As the sun finally dips behind the horizon, casting the village in deepening shades of orange and violet, the air cools at last. Torches flicker to life along the temple's perimeter, their smoke twisting upward like thin fingers. The workers slowly disperse back to their huts, the murmurs fading. You follow, the heavy thoughts of mortality lingering in your mind. The scent of roasting fish greets you at the door of your home. Tonight, at least, there's some small comfort waiting. Inside, your family is already gathered. Your wife hands you a wooden cup of beer, her tired smile faint but real. She's been baking all day in the communal oven, preparing small loaves for the temple's upcoming festival. Your son sits cross-legged near the corner, carving a small wooden figure of Bez, the dwarf god of protection and childbirth, a favourite household deity. As you eat, your wife speaks softly. They say the priestess saw a bad omen today. A falcon circled the temple 3 times before flying south. You glance at her, chewing slowly. Omens carry weight here. Falcons symbolize Horus, but erratic behavior might signal divine displeasure or impending change. Historians still argue whether these readings were true prophetic signs or simply superstition clinging to coincidence. Either way, nobody takes such sightings lightly. After dinner, you step outside once more. The stars blaze overhead, impossibly bright in the moonless sky. You trace familiar constellations, silently reciting their names as you were taught. Sobek rising in the east, Orion's belt shining boldly, Osiris guarding the heavens. You close your eyes for a moment, breathing in the cooler night air. Despite today's labour, despite the constant threat of heat stroke, injury and disease, you've made it through another day. But tomorrow, the sun will rise again, and with it the brutal reality of ancient Egypt resumes. Unrelenting, unforgiving, and always watching. The rooster's cry jerks you awake before the sun even crests the eastern horizon. The faint pre-dawn glow seeps through the thin cracks of your mud brick hut, painting everything in shades of grey. You sit up slowly, your back stiff from another night on the straw mat. Every joint protests as you stretch, feeling the tight pull of muscles still worn from yesterday's labour. Today is different, though. You're not heading to the tomb site. Not yet. Instead, you're scheduled for medical inspection. The overseers want to make sure the workforce stays functional, though it feels more like assessing livestock than caring for humans. You step outside into the cool morning air. For now, it's comfortable. A few early risers are already tending to small fires, preparing barley porridge for breakfast. The smell is earthy and warm, a fleeting comfort before the day's demands. By the temple's southern gate, a line has already formed. The physician stands under a shaded canopy, flanked by assistants who organize simple tools on a wooden table. Reed pens, small ceramic jars, bronze surgical knives, and bundles of herbs. His linen robe is pristine, his shaven head gleaming in the early light. The physician here is more than a doctor. He's a blend of healer, priest, and magician, drawing from a mix of empirical remedies and divine invocations. Medicine in ancient Egypt balances on the thin line between practical and mystical. Historians still argue whether it leaned more toward true science or elaborate superstition, but for you, it's simply your only hope of staying healthy enough to survive. You shuffle forward, eventually standing before him. He looks you over with quick, practiced eyes, noting the sunburn on your neck, the blisters on your hands, the faint swelling in your ankles. Without a word, he gestures for one assistant to fetch a small jar. The assistant returns with a thick paste made from honey, crushed dates, and herbs. The physician smears it onto a cracked blister on your hand. Honey, you know, is prized for its healing properties. It prevents infection, a rare, bright spot in an otherwise grim medical world. Keep your hands dry when you can, he says, knowing full well you rarely have that luxury. You nod obediently. Next he checks your eyes, pulling your lower lids down to examine the redness beneath. The dust and glare have irritated your vision, nothing unusual. He applies a dab of thick green malagic paste near your tear ducts. This kale mixture not only reduces glare, but may help prevent eye infections. Whether it works because of its mineral properties or simply by keeping the flies away, historians still debate. You're just grateful for the momentary relief. Behind you, another worker isn't as fortunate. His persistent cough draws a frown from the physician. He presses an ear to the man's chest, listening to the wet rattle deep within. The assistant whispers, and the physician quietly marks his tablet. You don't hear what's said, but you know what it means. Reassignment to lighter duties if he's lucky. If not, dismissal. As you leave the inspection area, you pass a side tent where the real miracles happen. There, the more mystical side of Egyptian medicine flourishes. A physician mutters incantations, waving a wand carved with protective symbols, while a patient lays still. The treatment involves not only herbs and salves, but spoken spells intended to drive out malevolent forces causing the illness. One woman clutches a tiny figurine of Bez, murmuring prayers as she waits her turn. Bez, with his lion-like face and dwarf body, wards off evil spirits, particularly those targeting pregnant women and children. You glance down at your own tiny amulet hanging from your neck. Your path takes you briefly past the temple's outer courtyard, where wealthier citizens receive much more elaborate care. You glimpse a noblewoman reclining on a cushioned platform, her skin glistening with perfumed oils as attendants fan her gently. Nearby, a physician carefully applies a poultice of crushed lotus petals and garlic to her foot. Even the rich are not immune to infection, but their treatments are certainly more pleasant. You shake your head slightly. For them, healing is a blend of comfort and ritual. For you, it's survival under the barest means. As you return to your hut, your wife greets you with a worried glance. She's heard the rumours too. Workers being dismissed for even minor ailments, leaving families desperate. Presses a small linen pouch into your hand. Inside are dried herbs she's gathered from the marshes. Marshmallow, willow bark, and some mint. Simple remedies, passed down through generations of common folk. No fancy chants, no priestly rituals. Just practical knowledge that might ease your aches and fevers when the temple's care falls short. You squeeze her hand briefly, grateful for her quiet resilience. Later in the morning, your temporary reprieve from labour allows you to observe another form of medicine, preventive offerings to the gods. A group of villagers carries baskets filled with onions, garlic, and small cakes to a shrine dedicated to Sekhmet, the lion-headed goddess of plagues and healing. Her dual nature fascinates you. She brings both disease and cure, destruction and protection. Appeasing her is seen as essential for keeping sickness at bay. The priest leads a chant, waving a smoking censer as villagers place their offerings on the stone altar. The scent of burning myrrh fills the air again, heady and sweet, mixing with a sharp bite of garlic. Nearby, a small group gathers around a storyteller, an older man with a voice like smooth papyrus. He recounts tales of Imhotep, the legendary vizier and healer, who was later deified as a god of medicine. Imhotep's name carries weight even now, centuries after his death. His blend of architectural brilliance and healing arts makes him something of a mythical figure. Historians still debate whether his legendary status grew larger than his real achievements, but for the villagers, he's proof that divine wisdom once walked among mortals. The children sit wide-eyed, hanging on every word as the storyteller weaves images of Imhotep curing impossible ailments and designing grand stone temples that scrape the heavens. You allow yourself a small smile. Stories like these give people hope, a fragile but precious thing in a world that offers so little comfort. By late afternoon, the overseers summon you back to work. Your reprieve was short-lived, as always. You join a small crew tasked with repairing irrigation channels along the Nile's edge. As you wade through ankle-deep water, adjusting stones and clearing silt, you keep a wary eye on the river's surface. The Nile may give life, but it demands constant respect. Crocodiles lurk in the shallows, and every so often, a dark shape glides just beneath the murky waterline. You freeze as one of them surfaces briefly, a massive Nile crocodile, eyes just above the water, watching. Your heart pounds. You inch backward, never turning your back fully. The beast eventually slips under again, disappearing like a shadow. The others pretend not to notice, keeping their focus on their tasks. A healthy respect for nature's danger is ingrained here. Everyone knows someone who was lost to the river. The sun begins its slow descent once more as you finish your work. You wipe your hands on your linen, glancing back at the Nile's shimmering surface. The crocodile is gone, for now, but it's always there, waiting. Just like the brutal reality of life in ancient Egypt. The sun sets in a hazy blaze, casting long, eerie shadows across the village. You return to your hut, exhausted, skin tight with salt, muscles twitching involuntarily from the day's strain. Yet, as night falls, the air carries a different weight. The regular hum of evening activity is tinged with a certain tension. Something's brewing. Word spreads quickly in a small workers' village, especially when it involves the gods. A small group of priests has arrived from another temple, bringing with them new sacred artifacts to be displayed during tomorrow's festival. It's a rare event, one that draws both reverence and anxiety. Tonight, the priests will perform preliminary offerings to ensure the gods' favour. You find yourself drawn to the gathering near the village shrine, a modest stone structure dedicated to a local form of Bastet, the cat-headed goddess of home and protection. Oil lamps flicker along the shrine's edge, casting warm circles of light in the growing darkness. The lead priest begins the ceremony, his voice steady, practiced. Incense smoke curls upward, mixing with the cool evening breeze. Small clay figurines of cats and protective amulets are laid out before the goddess's statue. Offerings of fish, bread, and dried herbs are placed carefully, as chants rise into the star-speckled sky. You watch as one woman approaches, clutching a tiny wrapped bundle, a sickly child. She whispers fervent prayers for healing, eyes wide with desperation. The priest gently touches the child's forehead, then places a small bronze amulet around his neck. Whether the goddess intervenes is anyone's guess, but the ceremony itself provides comfort. Historians still argue whether these rituals had psychological benefits, or if the people truly believe divine forces actively altered their fates. A slight movement catches your eye. Several cats lounge near the shrine, their sleek bodies weaving among the offerings. They're not just tolerated, they're welcomed, even revered. Cats hold a sacred place here. You've heard stories of entire households being punished for harming one, even accidentally. The goddess Bastet's wrath is not taken lightly. As the ceremony continues, your mind drifts. The presence of these visiting priests sparks an unease in the village. Outsiders always bring whispers of change, of omens and rumours. You recall the noble woman's falcon omen your wife mentioned earlier. Small signs, adding up to something. Unsettling. Later that night, back at your hut, your wife shares more gossip. They say a scribe saw an ibis flying north at dawn, she whispers as you settle onto your mat. Sign of unrest among the priesthood. Some say the gods are displeased. You grunt softly, pulling your linen over your shoulders. In a world so tightly bound to the divine, even birds in flight can trigger anxiety. The ibis, sacred to Thoth, the god of wisdom, scribes and judgment, carries heavy symbolic weight. Movements in the heavens, unusual behaviour among animals, sudden storms, they all become messages, interpreted and reinterpreted endlessly. Historians still debate whether this elaborate system of omens helped the Egyptians cope with their unpredictable environment, or merely fueled their anxiety. Sleep comes fitfully again. Every sound, the rustle of reeds, the distant croak of frogs, the soft clicking of beetles, keeps your senses on edge. The cool air is a temporary comfort, but your mind remains crowded with images of crocodiles, collapsing stone ramps, and heavy hearts weighed before Anubis. You awaken before sunrise, summoned for a new duty, assisting with preparations for the festival. Today's task shifts you from back-breaking labour to ceremonial service, still exhausting, but with a different kind of pressure. The temple courtyard bustles as villagers, artisans and priests prepare for the arrival of the high priest and his entourage. Large painted banners are strung between columns, and tables are covered with offerings, baskets of figs, dates, honey cakes and roasted goose. Clay jars of beer and wine are lined up carefully. The scent of roasting meat mingles with the fragrant wafts of incense, from Punt, myrrh from Nubia. One of the visiting priests approaches you with a basket. "Lay these before Hathor's altar," he instructs, his tone calm but expectant. Inside are small blue faience amulets shaped like cowheads, symbols of the goddess. Hathor, the Lady of Joy, protector of love, music and motherhood, holds a cherished place in the Egyptian pantheon. Yet, like many deities here, she's as capable of wrath as she is of mercy. As you place the offerings on the polished stone altar, you steal a glance at the grand statues towering above. The wide, serene face of Hathor watches eternally, her horned headdress holding the solar disk aloft. You can't help but wonder what it feels like to live so close to the god's domain, and whether that closeness offers protection or merely paints a target on your back. The arrival of the high priest signals the festival's formal start. His elaborate linen robes ripple as he moves with measured grace, gold amulets flashing on his chest. The entire courtyard bows as he begins the invocation, calling upon the gods for a prosperous flood season and continued favor for the pharaoh. The chants rise, harmonizing with the rhythmic beat of sistrum rattles and hand drums. The sound reverberates through the columns, filling the air with an otherworldly energy. You stand at the edge, careful to remain unobtrusive. Even as a participant, you're painfully aware of your station. The priests carry the power here, their intimate relationship with the gods both revered and feared. Historians still argue whether the priesthood truly believed in their divine duties, or skillfully used ritual to maintain political power. From where you stand, the distinction feels irrelevant. Their control is absolute. The ceremony builds to a climax as dancers emerge, their bare feet pounding the stone floor in precise, hypnotic steps. They move in perfect unison, their arms outstretched in flowing arcs, hair swinging rhythmically. The sistrums rattle, their metallic jingles echoing like distant stars chiming. A hush falls as the final offering is presented. A live goose, its wings bound, carried forward by a trembling novice priest. The high priest raises his voice, invoking mouth goddess of balance, to maintain harmony in the kingdom. The goose will be sacrificed, its blood offered to the gods. Death feeds the divine, even here. You turn your gaze away instinctively, knowing better than to watch too closely. The ceremony concludes as the sun reaches its peak. The high priest blesses the crowd, and a wave of collective relief washes through the courtyard. For today, the gods are appeased. As the crowd disperses, you return to your hut, weary from the long hours of standing under the sun's growing glare. Your wife greets you with a faint smile, already preparing a small evening meal. You sit quietly, grateful for the moment of calm. The festival may have brought a reprieve, but the world remains as precarious as ever. You know tomorrow will bring more hauling, more sweat, more prayers whispered to indifferent gods. And as you settle into your mat once again, the distant croak of frogs by the Nile seems to whisper softly. Survive, survive, survive. The festival's flickering embers are barely cold when your new assignment arrives. No more hauling limestone today. You're headed straight to the fields. The Nile's flooding season approaches, and the overseers want every available worker clearing canals and patching irrigation dikes before the river rises. Without these preparations, fields won't flood properly, and harvests could fail. And if harvests fail, so does everything else. You march alongside a small group, tools slung over your shoulder, to the edge of the sprawling farmland. The fertile strip hugging the Nile gleams in the early light, deceptively peaceful. This narrow green ribbon is Egypt's lifeline. Beyond it, endless desert stretches out like an enormous sun-bleached graveyard. Your bare feet squelch into the damp soil as you wade into the first irrigation channel. Thick silt clings to your legs, and sharp reeds scratch your skin. The air buzzes with dragonflies, and the ever-present whine of mosquitoes. You swat instinctively, feeling another itchy welt bloom on your arm. The labour feels lighter than stone hauling, but it's no less punishing. Shoveling mud under the rising sun quickly turns your body into a slick, filthy mess. The occasional croak of frogs and chirp of ibises offer brief moments of distraction. You glance at a pair of sacred ibis birds picking delicately through the shallows. Thoth's messengers, you remind yourself. Maybe they are watching, maybe not. As you work, the foreman paces along the canal, occasionally barking orders. One worker, lagging from exhaustion, earns a sharp whack from his staff. "The Nile waits for no man," the foreman shouts. You keep your head down and your hands moving. Beside you, a young worker named Many strikes up quiet conversation between grunts. "They say Pharaoh's court is nervous," he whispers. "Strange omens, strange dreams." You glance sideways. Dreams. He nods. A scribe says the Pharaoh's been visited in his sleep. Visions of the gods arguing, of Ma trembling. You grunt, unsure how to respond. Such talk is dangerous. But you've heard enough whispers lately about birds flying in odd patterns, about priests disagreeing behind temple walls, to know that something's stirring. Historians still debate whether these stories of divine warnings reflect real political tensions, or simply the Egyptians' deep need to find meaning in every unexplained event. Your mind wanders briefly as your hands continue their repetitive labour. You imagine the Pharaoh tossing on silk sheets, sweating not from the heat, but from fear. Even with his power, even with an army of priests chanting on his behalf, the gods could turn fickle. After all, even pharaohs have hearts to weigh in the afterlife. Suddenly, Mene hisses sharply and grabs your arm, pulling you back. Just ahead, a puff of silt stirs unnaturally beneath the water's surface. You freeze, heart pounding, as a long, narrow head rises silently. A large Nile crocodile, its ancient, armoured back breaking the surface like a submerged log. It floats for a moment, golden eyes unblinking, before submerging again and vanishing into the murky channel. You exhale slowly, feeling your pulse hammer behind your eyes. Many wipes his brow with a shaky hand. "Sobek watches today," he murmurs, invoking the crocodile god's name. You both step carefully from the water to resume work elsewhere. These creatures worshipped in temples, feared in life, are constant reminders that Egypt's gods walk both sides of the line between protection and destruction. By midday, the heat presses down with renewed vengeance. The mud dries in thick crusts along your skin, cracking with every movement. Water-bearers move through the field, doling out small cups of barley beer to keep workers from collapsing outright. You savour each sip, grateful for even this gritty, warm liquid. A break is called when a delegation arrives from the temple. More priests, this time accompanied by scribes. The high priest himself rides a small boat along one of the canals, shaded by ornate linen canopies. His presence freezes the workers in place as everyone bows low. He surveys the scene with calm authority, offering brief nods of approval while his attendants scribble furiously on their scrolls. This inspection isn't only about religious oversight, it's about taxes. Every grain harvested will be measured, recorded, and redistributed according to Pharaoh's will. And woe to those who fail to meet their quota. The scribes control the kingdom's wealth with ink and reeds, their power as sharp as any soldier's spear. As the priests move on, whispers rise among the workers. "Do you see his amulet?" one man murmurs. A new symbol, both Ra and Aten together. You frown, following the gossip. This is delicate territory. Aten, the disk of the sun, has its own cult. A newer movement some say is favoured by Pharaoh himself. Historians still argue how deeply this shift affected daily life before Akhenaten's full reforms, but even minor hints of such changes ripple through the population like distant thunder. Many glances nervously. If the gods fight each other, where does that leave us? You have no answer. You scrape another heap of silt from the canal wall and dump it onto the growing pile. No matter which god ascends, the work never changes down here. By late afternoon, the air thickens further as distant thunderheads pile along the horizon, a sign that the Nile's inundation is coming soon. The priests had better hope their offerings were sufficient. As the workday ends, You pass a group of fishermen hauling in nets from the river. Their catch flops and writhes. Silver-scaled fish, some eels, even a small turtle. A good haul today. One of the men calls out cheerfully, "The river is generous this season." You smile faintly, but your gaze lingers on the swirling dark water behind them. Somewhere beneath that glassy surface, the crocodile drifts silently, waiting for a moment of carelessness. Back at your hut, the evening air carries heavy scents of rain and river mud. Your wife lights a small oil lamp as you settle in. The children whisper about the festival's dancers and the glittering gold they saw on the priests' robes. You listen quietly, grateful for their innocent excitement. As night deepens, distant thunder rumbles across the plains. The sky flashes briefly, illuminating the palm trees in ghostly silhouettes. The Nile is swelling. Soon the fields will vanish under muddy waters, bringing both promise and risk. You close your eyes to sleep, but the river's whispers seem louder tonight. The crocodile glides through your thoughts, silent and patient, just beneath the surface. Like so many of Egypt's dangers, always there, always waiting. The sound of frogs croaking and the gentle splash of rising waters wake you before dawn. The air is thick and heavy, filled with the scent of damp earth and rotting reeds. The Nile is swelling, creeping steadily into the irrigation channels and over the fields. The long-anticipated inundation has begun. You step outside, feet sinking slightly into the soft, slick ground. The village hums with cautious energy. This annual flood is the lifeblood of Egypt, depositing rich black silt that ensures fertile crops for the coming year. Without it, famine would spread like disease. But too much water can also bring disaster. Wash away homes, drown livestock, fields turn to useless marsh. The gods giveth, and the gods taketh. You squint at the river as the first hints of pink creep into the eastern sky. Wooden markers, placed carefully along the shore, help measure the water's rise. The scribes will record every increment, with obsessive precision, for these measurements will determine the year's taxes. The higher the flood, the richer the harvest, and the heavier the burden. A low-ranking priest wades into the shallows, reciting an invocation to Hapi, god of the inundation. His voice is calm, but behind him scribes furiously scratch numbers onto damp papyrus scrolls. The entire kingdom depends on these readings. Historians still debate how much of Egypt's centralized bureaucracy was built on managing the flood taxes, storage, redistribution, but standing here, you see its importance first. Your day's task shifts yet again. With the tomb construction on temporary hold, you're assigned to sandbagging duty, reinforcing the canal barriers. Thick bundles of papyrus reeds are gathered and lashed together to form makeshift levees, keeping the floodwaters from overrunning the villages too soon. If you join a crew stacking these barriers, your feet sloshing through ankle-deep water. The mud sucks at your sandals, trying to pull you down with every step. The rising sun casts shimmering reflections on the water's surface, dazzling and disorienting. You keep your focus low, eyes on your footing. The crocodiles have grown bold. Several glide lazily near the edge of the expanding water. Their smooth backs and flicking tails barely disturb the surface. It's as if they're watching, amused by the humans' frantic efforts to control what cannot be controlled. Nearby, an elder warns a young boy retrieving floating debris. "Mind your feet, child." Sobek watches closely. The boy scrambles back, wide-eyed. The god Sobek embodies the river's unpredictable duality, its nourishment and its danger. Temples dedicated to him dot the land, and even now, offerings are being tossed into the current. Baskets of flowers, strips of linen, tiny clay crocodiles. As you work, a scribe passes by with a wooden writing board, pausing to inspect your crew's progress. His reed brush flicks swiftly, noting who works quickly, who lags behind. These scribes, thin, pale, untouched by heavy labour, hold more power than any overseer. They record everything: grain yields, labour hours, taxes owed. A single stroke of their pen can change your entire life. You glance at his scroll and glimpse symbols recording the flood level. Not too high, not too low. a favourable omen. For now. By midday, the heat grows fierce again. The combination of humidity and sun creates a thick, suffocating blanket. Your skin is slick with sweat and mud. The papyrus levees are slippery, and more than once you nearly lose your footing while hauling bundles into place. Suddenly a distant shout echoes across the water. A family's goat, grazing too near the rising flood, is swept into the current. The animal struggles briefly before disappearing beneath the surface. The villagers stand frozen, silent. There will be no rescue. The Nile takes what it wants. Many, working beside you again, mutters under his breath. One life for the many, he says grimly. Better the goat than a child. You nod, though the chill crawling up your spine doesn't ease. The river may nourish Egypt, but its appetite is never sated. Later that afternoon, a group of temple officials arrives with baskets of grain offerings, brought to the riverbank as part of a special ritual. The head priest, his elaborate leopard skin cloak marking his high rank, chants loudly, orders his arms toward the heavens. The people join in, reciting the ancient hymn to Hapi. Hail to you, Hapi, who comes forth in peace, filling the land with bounty, nourishing all creation. The rhythmic chant grows louder, echoing across the wide, shimmering water. You join in softly, the familiar words slipping from your lips. Whether from true belief or desperate hope, you're not sure anymore. Historians still debate whether these public rituals were heartfelt acts of faith or carefully staged performances to maintain social order. To you, they feel like both. The ceremony reaches its climax as a priest casts a small wooden boat, loaded with flowers, bread and beer, into the flood waters. The offering drifts briefly, then vanishes into the current. A collective sigh rises from the crowd, part relief, part apprehension. As evening falls, you return to your hut, exhausted but strangely soothed by the day's rhythm. The distant thunder of the river echoes softly in your ears as your family gathers around the small cooking fire. Tonight's meal is simple: fish, lentils, and a few precious figs gathered before the fields disappeared under water. Your wife shares new whispers. The priests argue behind closed doors. Some say there's unrest at the palace. You glance at her, cautious. What kind of unrest? She lowers her voice. A scribe was overheard saying the Pharaoh fears betrayal plots among the priests, perhaps even among his wives. You sigh deeply. Politics among the elite always trickles down as rumours for the common folk. But such talk carries danger. You change the subject quickly, pointing to your son as he proudly displays a small woven toy boat he's made to mimic the priest's ritual vessel. Good work, you say, ruffling his hair. The river continues its slow rise through the night. You lie awake on your mat, listening to its steady murmur. The stars wheel overhead, and once again you spot Orion, Osiris standing sentinel in the sky. You whisper a quiet prayer to him, asking, like everyone else here, simply to make it through another season. The days following the flood's rise bring a rare period of calm, a strange, almost uneasy stillness. With the fields submerged, labour shifts from back-breaking physical work to waiting, watching, and maintaining the village's fragile defences against the Nile's whims. You wake each morning to find your world shrunk to a narrow ribbon of dry ground between the encroaching water and the endless desert. The air feels thicker than usual. The humidity clings to your skin like wet linen. Even breathing feels heavier, as if the Nile has crept not only into the land but into your lungs. The village is busy with maintenance, patching roofs, reinforcing storage granaries, and tending to small floating platforms where vegetables are grown in the shallows. But there's another task looming over everyone now: taxes. Scribes arrive daily, their scrolls growing longer with every measurement of the flood's height. Their calculations determine how much grain, linen, and beer each family will owe once the waters recede. You glance warily at them as you haul bundles of reeds to the storehouse. The scribes carry no whips, no weapons, but their words cut sharper than any blade. One scribe, younger than most, pauses near you, shading his scroll from the glare. He squints at your family's name written in flowing hieroglyphs. "Your household grew more onions this year than last," he says without looking up. "Good. Temple will expect its share." You nod mutely. There's no negotiation. The gods are owed their portion, the priests their due, and the Pharaoh his tribute. What remains is yours, barely. Taxes here aren't just grain or labour. Everything is taxed. Fishing rights, livestock, even your own breath, it sometimes feels like. The Pharaoh owns the land, the river, and technically, even you. Historians still argue whether the ancient Egyptian tax system was surprisingly efficient or oppressively parasitic. From your place beneath it, the answer feels obvious. As the scribe moves on, you notice the village priest speaking softly with an older man near the granaries. Their hushed voices carry just enough for you to catch fragments, omens still unclear, tensions in Thebes, the court divided. The court again. The rumours of unrest grow louder each day. Some whisper of priests growing bolder, challenging the pharaoh's favourite cult of Aten. Others hint at secret alliances forming among noble families. You keep your head down. Whatever happens among the powerful always ripples dangerously into the lives of the powerless. Later that afternoon, as you help reinforce one of the storage buildings, a loud commotion erupts near the main road. You turn quickly, wiping sweat from your brow, and spot a tax collector's caravan approaching oxen, pulling a heavily loaded cart piled with sealed baskets of grain. Guards march alongside, their spears gleaming in the sun. The villagers fall silent, watching the procession with a mixture of fear and resentment. Every basket represents long days bent under the sun, every measure of barley a meal lost. The tax collectors stop near the central granary, where temple officials begin inspecting the cargo. A child nearby whispers to his mother, "Why does Pharaoh need so much food?" The mother pulls him close, hushing him sharply. You glance at them, feeling the same silent question gnawing at your gut. The surplus feeds the temples, the priests, the scribes, and Pharaoh's court lavish feasts behind phallus walls, while common families ration thin porridge. The inspection drags on until dusk, when finally the caravan rolls toward the temple storehouses. The guards remain, though, their presence lingering like a storm cloud. You know they're watching for anyone tempted to withhold offerings or hide grain, an offence punishable by flogging, or worse. As night falls, your wife brings you a small meal, roasted fish wrapped in palm leaves, accompanied by thin beer. You eat quietly, both of you aware of how much thinner the meals have grown since the tax tallies began. "They say another scribe was sent to Memphis today," she whispers, "to deliver news to the royal court." "More news of unrest?" you ask softly. She nods, glancing around to be sure no one overhears. They argue about the gods themselves now, about which god should rule the heavens. You stare into the flickering firelight, the shadows dancing like uncertain answers. The cult of Aten, the sun disk, continues to rise in influence, challenging the ancient pantheon that has ruled for generations. Even Ra, the great sun god, seems to have a rival in his own domain. Historians still debate how deeply common Egyptians felt these shifting theological winds. For most, you suspect it matters less which god sits highest than which one leaves them alone. Suddenly, a sharp hiss from the corner of the hut pulls your attention. A small, striped snake wriggles across the floor, its forked tongue flickering rapidly. Your wife freezes. You grab a nearby stick and, with a careful, swift motion, pin the snake's head, then carefully scoop it outside. Of Ray's mercy, your wife exhales once the door is closed. It's the season for them. The rising waters drive snakes from their usual hiding places. Horned vipers, cobras, and sand boas slither freely now, seeking shelter wherever they can. Some are revered as sacred, others simply feared. You know that one bite could mean death without the proper herbs or spells. Back inside, your children watch you with wide eyes, their fascination mingling with fear. You force a small smile and ruffle your son's hair. "These will protect us," you reassure them, gesturing toward the small household statue perched near the door. A squat, fierce dwarf god brandishing his tiny sword. The children nod, comforted by the familiar charm. Later, as you settle into your mat, the croak of frogs mixes with the distant hum of chanting from the temple. The priests work late into the night these days, their voices rising and falling like waves in the dark. You can almost make out the rhythm of their prayers. Offerings to Ra, to Ma'at, to Hapi, and increasingly to Aten. You stare at the ceiling as the stars peek through cracks in the thatched roof. You've lived your entire life under the weight of the gods. But now, with whispers of unrest growing louder, even the heavens seem uncertain. And when the gods themselves are uncertain, what hope remains for mortals like you? Morning breaks with the screeching cry of ibises and the low murmur of the Nile lapping against the village edge. You wake feeling strangely hollow, your dreams weighed down by unsettling visions of flickering gods and scales tipping wildly under Anubis's steady gaze. The air feels charged, heavier than usual, as if the world is holding its breath. Today you are summoned for a task far different from stone hauling or canal clearing. You've been chosen to assist at the temple itself, specifically within the sacred preparation chambers reserved for funerary rites. The priests need extra hands, as one of the local nobles has died unexpectedly. His family demands an elaborate burial. You swallow your nerves and make your way to the temple's western courtyard, where a group of workers and novices gathers under the stern gaze of the priestly staff. The sun has barely risen, yet the sandstone walls already radiate trapped heat. Incense smoke wafts through the air, sharp and bitter, masking the faint but unmistakable tang of death that lingers beyond the curtained doorway. The head embalmer, robed in pure white linen and wearing a jackal-headed mask to honour Anubis, surveys you silently before gesturing for you to follow. Inside, the dimly lit room smells of resin, honey, and natron. Clay jars are neatly arranged on low shelves, each labelled carefully with hieroglyphs marking their contents. This is a space of precision and reverence, and grim practicality. The nobleman's body lies on a stone slab, already partially prepared. The first stages of embalming have begun. The brain has been removed through the nostrils with long, hooked tools, a process that still makes your stomach churn, no matter how many times you hear it described. The stomach cavity lies open, cleaned and ready for the next phase. You're handed bundles of natron salt, pale, rough and coarse, and instructed to carefully pack them around and inside the body. Natron draws out the moisture, preserving the flesh for eternity. Your hands tremble slightly as you work, the salt scraping against your skin. Every action must be precise. Any mistake might anger the family or worse, the gods. Nearby, other workers prepare the canopic jars. The organs, once washed and treated, are placed inside their protective containers, each guarded by the 4 sons of Horus. The priest whispers protective spells as each organ is sealed. Liver, guarded by Imsati. Lungs, guarded by Hapi. Stomach, guarded by Dumatef. Intestines, guarded by Kibisanuif. The rhythmic chanting is oddly soothing, like a heartbeat anchoring you in this unsettling task. Historians still argue whether the Egyptians truly believed each organ's safety in the afterlife depended on these gods, or whether the ritual simply offered comfort to the living. Standing here, elbow deep in natron, you understand how tightly belief and practice intertwine. A few steps away, another novice worker is preparing the amulets that will be tucked into the linen wrappings. Tiny scarabs, Eye of Horus charms, and miniature ankhs glisten under the flickering oil lamps. These charms serve as magical safeguards, their placement dictated by centuries of tradition and divine instruction. At one point the priest notices a small amulet slightly out of position. His sharp rebuke snaps through the chamber. The gods do not forgive carelessness, he warns. You nod instinctively, your chest tightening. This isn't just about preserving a body, it's about preparing a soul for eternity. Hours pass in the enclosed, fragrant space. The chanting continues, broken only by the careful instructions of the embalmers. Layers of resin-coated linen slowly envelop the noble's form, each fold tight and deliberate. The wrappings are infused with oils, myrrh, and cinnamon, creating a sweet, cloying scent that clings to your skin and fills your nostrils. Finally, the ritual mask, a painted likeness of the deceased, is placed over the face. The transformation is complete. What was once a man now resembles Osiris, king of the afterlife. The priests stand in solemn silence for a long moment, heads bowed. The embalming is finished, but your work is not. The procession will soon carry the body to its resting place, and you are assigned to help transport the funerary goods. Chests filled with clothing, food offerings, wooden figurines of servants called shaptis, all destined to accompany the noble into the next world. You haul a chest onto a waiting sled. As you strain against the weight, sweat pouring freely, your mind drifts to your own future. When your time comes, will anyone prepare you with such care? Will there be priests to recite your name? Will your organs find shelter in finely carved jars? More likely, you'll be buried in a simple pit, wrapped in rough linen, your soul left to navigate Duat on its own. Historians still argue whether the elaborate mummification rituals offered true comfort, or simply widened the chasm between the rich and poor in both life and death. You know where you stand. The procession begins as the sun reaches its peak. Drummers set the rhythm, their hollow thumps echoing across the village streets. Mourners wail loudly, their voices raw and piercing. Professional mourners, hired women with loosened hair and bare feet, lead the cries, embodying grief on behalf of the family. Their howls are unsettling yet deeply familiar, a sound you've heard since childhood. You follow the column toward the necropolis, where tombs are carved into the rock like eternal apartments. The noble's family carries baskets of offerings, jars of beer, bread, onions, and dried fish. These gifts will sustain the spirit in the afterlife, or so everyone hopes. At the tomb entrance, priests perform the opening of the mouth ceremony, a vital ritual believed to restore the deceased's ability to eat, speak, and breathe in the afterlife. The priest touches sacred tools to the mask's lips, reciting powerful incantations while incense swirls around them. You watch from a respectful distance as the body is finally sealed within the tomb. The sandstone door is closed, the family whispers their final prayers, and the priests proclaim that the nobleman now journeys to the field of reeds, a paradise of eternal harvest, where the sun always shines gently, the fields yield endlessly, and sickness never comes. As the procession disperses, you make your slow way back to the village, your legs heavy with fatigue, and your thoughts heavier still. The line between life and death feels thinner here, as if one misstep could tip you into the shadowy waters of Duat without warning. That night, as you lie beneath your creaking thatched roof, you stare at the darkness above. Your mind lingers on the noble's carefully prepared voyage to eternity. You wonder if Anubis truly stands at the gates, weighing every heart with his steady black paw. You wonder if Ma'at's feather floats gently, or if the devourer Ammit lies waiting with gaping jaws. And you wonder whether your own heart would balance. Dawn breaks with a thin band of gold slicing through the horizon, but the village wakes slower today. The procession's echoes still linger in your ears, the wails of mourners haunting the morning air. Death clings to the village like a stubborn mist, but as always, life moves forward. Because it has to. You're summoned early, not to haul stones or patch canals, but for something more delicate, preparing a shipment for the palace. A royal official has arrived, flanked by guards with gleaming spears and polished shields. The villagers stand at cautious attention as the official surveys the storage huts. His jewellery glints sharply, catching every morning ray. His voice cuts through the air. The Pharaoh's granaries must be filled. The quotas will be met. You exchange quick glances with your neighbours. No one speaks. The official's gaze lingers just long enough to freeze the blood in your veins before he moves on. Your assigned crew works under close supervision, loading baskets of barley and sacks of flax onto waiting oxen carts. Every kernel, every thread is counted. The scribes murmur softly, their reed pens gliding over scrolls like silent daggers. Their records will travel north, reaching Pharaoh's court in Memphis long before any rumors do. As you work, your mind drifts to the growing tension spreading like cracks through the kingdom. The whispers about Pharaoh's growing paranoia have reached even your lowly hut. His obsession with religious purity grows louder. Some say he fears not just foreign enemies, but his own priests, especially those who resist the rising cult of Aten. You hear Meni's voice beside you, low and careful. Another priest from Thebes was dismissed last week, he whispers. Refused to change his prayers. You nod slightly, feigning focus on the baskets. The gods are quarrelling. Historians still argue how widespread the Aten reforms truly became before Akhenaten's full reign, but for people like you, even the suggestion of divine discord makes every day feel brittle. The priest's power has always been a constant. If the gods themselves shift, where does that leave the world? As you finish loading the final cart, you catch sight of the official conversing with the village priest. The priest's face is tight with forced calm, but his fingers twitch nervously against his robe's hem. Their discussion is hushed, but you catch fragments. The high priest's temples resisting. Pharaoh demands. Many glances at you again, eyes wide. When priests argue, heads fall, he mutters, barely audible. By midday, the caravan begins its slow journey north. The carts creak under the weight of tribute as dust clouds rise behind them. The official departs, leaving the village in a strained silence. The guards linger for a while longer, silent reminders of Pharaoh's gaze reaching even here. You return home for a brief meal, stomach tight from more than hunger. Your wife greets you with cautious eyes. She's heard the same whispers, of course. Everyone has. Did you see, she asks softly, the priest made new offerings this morning? You nod. To Aten. She glances toward the small household altar near your door, where Bastet, Bees and Osiris still stand vigil. And what of the others? She asks, voice barely above a whisper. That's the question eating at everyone now. The gods have ruled for millennia, each with their roles. Ra in the sky, Osiris in the underworld, Isis watching over a family, Ma-At keeping balance. But this Aten, this blinding, featureless disk, threatens to push them aside. Some say Pharaoh sees himself as Aten's only voice on earth. Later that evening, you're summoned once more, not for work, but for questioning. You stand before the village overseer and a visiting official from the palace. The man's shaved head glistens in the torchlight, his wide collar studded with turquoise and lapis lazuli. His expression is unreadable. You've worked on the pharaoh's tomb, he begins. You've seen the stone reliefs. You nod, pulse quickening. He studies you, voice calm but edged. Have any among your crew spoken ill of the pharaoh's wishes, of his devotion to Aten? You feel your throat tighten. This isn't just a question, it's a trap. One wrong answer could ruin not only you, but your family. No, noble sir, you reply carefully, keeping your gaze low. We honour all gods, as instructed. The official holds your stare for an excruciating moment, before nodding to the overseer. See that they continue to do so. You're dismissed, heart pounding as you step back into the cooler night air. Meni catches you afterward, eyes wide. They're testing us now, he hisses, seeing who's loyal. You don't answer. You don't have to. The next morning you're sent back to the tomb site. The construction continues. Always continues. The carved images of the gods seem more rigid lately, less of Ra and Osiris, more of a tense, radiant disk stretching long fingers of light over the pharaoh's image. You study one relief as you work, hands steadying a ladder while the artisan etches delicate rays reaching down toward Pharaoh's outstretched hands. Unlike the familiar gods with faces and stories, Aten offers only light pure, unrelenting, inescapable. The artisan mutters quietly to himself, his voice nearly drowned by the sound of chiseling. Light without a face, a god without mercy. You say nothing but hold the ladder tighter. As the day wears on, your body moves through the familiar motions, hauling, positioning, stabilizing, but your mind churns. You've always known the dangers of crocodiles, floods, disease. But this feels more dangerous than any of them. This is the kind of danger you can't see until it snaps its jaws shut. By nightfall, the wind shifts, carrying cooler air from the south. The river reflects a perfect copy of the darkening sky, and once again you find yourself staring at the stars, silent witnesses to every change, every rising and falling destiny. The gods may fight, the priests may whisper, pharaohs may declare new visions. But for people like you, only one thing remains certain. The next sunrise will bring work, and you will rise to meet it. Because survival, in Egypt, is its own religion. You wake before dawn, as always. The stars still shimmer faintly above the eastern horizon, fading slowly as the light of Aten creeps upward. You've grown used to waking with a knot of dread twisting quietly in your gut. The days feel heavier now, not just because of labor, but because of the atmosphere hanging over the village. A charged silence that everyone feels but no one dares name. Today, you are assigned a different task again. Not hauling stone, not dredging canals, not preparing funerary offerings, but assisting with a marriage contract. It's a welcome break from back-breaking labor, but you know better than to assume it will be simple. In the village's small administrative hut, the scribe sits behind a low wooden table, reed pen poised over a fresh scroll of papyrus. His skin is pale from years spent in the shade, his fingers stained permanently with ink. Marriage, here, isn't sealed by love alone. It's a contract, a carefully worded balance of property, dowry, and duty. The young couple sits nearby, the bride draped in simple linen, her hair braided with care, the groom nervous but trying to appear confident. Their families hover like vultures, ready to interject if necessary. The bride's father clutches a pouch, heavy with silver rings and small beads. The dowry. The scribe clears his throat, his voice dry as the desert. The dowry is recorded as 1 goat, 3 woven linen garments, and 6 measures of barley. Groom offers in return his commitment to provide food, shelter, and protection. Should either party fail, reparations are owed. We watch silently. It's a strange balance, both transactional and deeply personal. The marriage binds not only 2 people, but 2 families, solidifying alliances, ensuring children who will work, farm, and pray for the dead. Love? Love is optional. Survival is not. Historians still debate how much affection played into these arrangements. Some marriages grew into true partnerships, others remained cold bargains. In truth, both likely coexisted, just like today. After the contract is signed and witnessed, the families retreat for the small celebration. Baskets of bread, dried fish, and figs are shared. Small clay jars of beer are passed around. Music drifts lightly from a pair of flutists playing under a date palm. The bride's younger sisters sprinkle petals along the dirt path, giggling as they dance. You linger on the edges, watching. These moments are rare glimpses of joy. For a few hours, the gods seem satisfied. The overseers silent, the scribes disinterested. Even the Nile, steady and bloated from its flood, seems momentarily benign. As you sip the murky beer, an older man joins you. A neighbour, one of the seasoned workers you've shared years of labour with. He squints into the sun. "Strange times," he mutters. You glance at him cautiously, unsure where he's heading. "They say the Pharaoh's new queen holds much sway now," he continues softly. "A foreign woman, some whisper. Others say she's the one pushing this Aten nonsense." You nod slowly, keeping your voice low. The priests grow nervous. He chuckles bitterly. "When priests are nervous, we should all be afraid." You share a faint, grim smile. It's an old truth. Later that afternoon, as you return to your own hut, you pass a small group of women gathered near the shrine of Hathor. They chant softly, offering prayers for fertility, always fertility. The entire structure of family life depends on producing children, sons to inherit and work, daughters to be married and expand alliances. Women here hold power in quiet, often overlooked ways. Your own wife greets you as you step inside. She's just returned from the riverbank, where she gathered reeds and herbs. Her face is flushed, whether from the heat or from the thin air of tension, you're not sure. "There's talk in the market," she says softly. "A woman caught with another man. Her husband demands judgment." You sigh. Adultery is a serious charge here. Though not punishable by death for commoners, it carries severe consequences. Public shaming, divorce, and loss of dowry. For nobles, the stakes are even higher. At court, infidelity can spark deadly intrigue, accusations of treason, even execution, if the pharaoh's honor is threatened. Historians still argue how strictly these laws were enforced among the lower classes. Official records suggest harsh penalties, but daily life often wove more nuanced, quiet resolutions. At least outside the palace's stone walls. As night falls, the accused woman is brought before the village elders. A small crowd gathers discreetly, pretending not to watch but listening closely. You keep your distance, observing. The husband stands rigid, face tight with humiliation. The accused woman trembles, clutching a small amulet of Isis. A desperate plea for compassion. The elders confer quietly, voices low. Eventually one steps forward and give his hand. The husband may choose divorce and forfeiture of dowry or reconciliation under watchful eyes. After a tense moment, the husband spits on the ground but nods. Divorce. The crowd disperses, whispers trailing like smoke. The woman will return to her father's house, her reputation damaged, but her life spared. In the palace, such an offence would have carried bloodshed. Here, among villagers, survival often trumps honour. You return home, grateful for your wife's quiet strength. She offers you a bowl of lentil stew, her fingers brushing yours briefly. A small gesture, but in this world, small gestures mean everything. As you eat, distant chanting from the temple carries on the night breeze. The priests have added new verses to their invocations. You recognize Aten's name slipping more frequently between the ancient hymns. The old gods grow silent. Your wife whispers as she ladles stew into your bowl. You listen to the chant's rhythm, or they're being silenced. Neither of you speaks after that. The stars wheel overhead again. The Nile glistens under pale moonlight. You lie awake on your mat, staring at the darkness, feeling the invisible lines pulling tighter around your world, between tradition and change, gods and men, husband and wife, power and survival. Tomorrow, the sun will rise, Aten's disk will burn overhead, and you will rise too, because that's what people like you do. You endure. The air feels different today. Not cooler, not gentler, if anything, hotter than usual, but charged with a strange electricity. Even the animals seem uneasy. As you trudge toward the temple grounds, you pass a row of tethered oxen lowing nervously, swatting flocks of ibises lifts into the sky, circling in awkward patterns before disappearing southward. The village is buzzing quietly. Whispers ripple like wind through reeds. A royal inspection is coming. Not just scribes or local officials. No, this time the Pharaoh's own envoys will arrive. Their presence sends subtle waves of panic through everyone. When power moves this close, ordinary people get crushed if they stand in the wrong place. You're summoned again to the construction site, not for labour today, but to help prepare for the inspection. The massive stone pylons marking the temple's entrance shimmer under the unforgiving sun. Artisans scrub the limestone with damp cloths to make it gleam. Statues are dusted, incense burners lit, and fresh offerings arranged carefully, baskets of figs, honeycombs, and jars of date wine. Your task is to clean the sacred courtyard. You move in practiced silence, broom in hand, sweeping dust from the polished stones, while the priests bustle around you. The head priest's voice booms above the activity, barking orders, his richly embroidered robe trailing behind him like a banner of authority. Everything must be perfect, he commands. The pharaoh's eyes see all. You glance toward the massive stone reliefs decorating the walls. More and more of them now depict ardent radiant rays stretching outward like fingers, bestowing life on Pharaoh and his family. The familiar gods Osiris, Isis, Horus are shrinking, being pushed aside or omitted altogether. You've watched this slow shift unfold, like a creeping shadow. Minnie works beside you, face tight. They say one of the priests was taken away last week, he mutters under his breath. Refuse to recite the new hymns. You nod, barely moving your lips. The gods are being rewritten. Historians still debate how willing or resistant ordinary Egyptians were to Akhenaten. From where you stand, resistance feels futile. The sun keeps rising, the work keeps coming, but underneath you feel the old gods simmering like coiled serpents. By mid-morning, a sudden hush falls. The royal entourage arrives. You glimpse them as you kneel by the courtyard's edge, tall soldiers with polished spears, linen-clad scribes carrying rolled papyri, and finally the noble envoy himself, his skin pale beneath elaborate cosmetics, his chest heavy with gold amulets depicting Aten's disk. Behind him follow his attendants, fanging and shading him as though the heat dares not touch him directly. The head priest bows deeply. The entire temple staff follows suit. You keep your head low, eyes on the ground, but you listen carefully. The pharaoh offers his favour upon this house, the envoy announces. May Aten's light continue to purify the land. The priests respond in unison. May his light guide us always. The envoy's eyes scan the workers as if measuring their loyalty by posture alone. You feel his gaze linger on your bowed head for an uncomfortable moment before moving on. He walks slowly through the temple, inspecting the stone reliefs, the altars, the offerings. When he stops before a depiction of Hathor, one of the few still visible, you hear his voice drop into something almost casual, but dangerously sharp. Curious, he muses. Hathor still lingers. The head priest bows again, choosing his words with care. She remains to honour Pharaoh's lineage, but her presence is less emphasized. The envoy offers a thin smile. Good. Let the old gods fade. Aten's light leaves no shadows. You suppress the impulse to shiver. The words are smooth, but the message is sharp. The inspection continues. You resume sweeping, keeping your head down, but your ears open. Every small comment, every sideways glance feels loaded with meaning. These aren't just inspections. They're tests of obedience. By midday, the entourage finally departs, their caravan rolling back toward Memphis. Only when the last dust cloud settles does the temple exhale its collective breath. The head priest wipes sweat from his brow, though the day's real heat seems to have come from fear. The workers disperse quietly. You walk back to the village, feet heavy. As you pass the fishermen hauling nets from the river, you pause to watch them sort their catch. Silver fish, glistening, flapping weakly on the woven mats. A large cat waits nearby, eyes locked on the pile, tail twitching. Cats remain untouched by politics, sacred to Bastet, honoured by all. They drift freely through this tense world, immune to the shifting gods of men. At home, your wife greets you with relief. You were at the temple, she asks softly. You nod. The envoy has come and gone. She lowers her voice. They say the pharaoh plans to build a new city, one dedicated only to Aten. No temples to the old gods, no priests except his own. You blink, the weight of it sinking in. A new city. They call it Akhenaten, she whispers, horizon of Aten. Historians still puzzle over how rapidly this city was built, and how abruptly the religious landscape changed under Akhenaten's reign. For people like you, it sounds like an earthquake rolling across sacred ground. You sit in silence, the thin stew cooling between your fingers. A city without Osiris, without Isis, without Mayat. A city where Aten alone rules. What does that even look like? What happens to people like you, who've whispered prayers to Bastet and Anubis your entire lives? As night falls, you step outside. The Nile reflects the star-speckled sky once more. You glance toward the household shrine beside your door, where your small carved figures of the old gods still stand. Your wife joins you, holding your hand lightly. "Do you think they're angry?" she asks softly. "The old gods?" You exhale slowly. If they are, they're very quiet. And yet, deep in your chest, you feel something heavy. Not anger exactly, but unease. Like something coiled beneath still water. Waiting. The night air hums softly with insects and frogs. But behind that hum, behind the quiet chanting still drifting from the temple, you sense the weight of something gathering. The gods may shift, but the world beneath their feet remains dangerously alive. The Nile has begun to recede, leaving behind thick black silt that sticks to your feet like wet clay as you walk toward the docks. Fields are visible again, glistening and raw, ready to be planted once more. But today, you're not here for planting. You've been assigned to one of the most dreaded tasks of all, river transport. A shipment of stone must be ferried downstream toward the Pharaoh's royal quarries. You've heard the stories. You've seen the wreckage of broken boats caught on sandbars. You've seen what lies beneath these waters. The papyrus boat waits at the shore, a long, narrow vessel, its reeds tightly bound, gently bobbing against the wooden posts. It looks fragile, always too fragile. The overseer calls your name, motioning for you to join the crew loading heavy cargo onto its deck. Baskets of tools, ceramic jars of resin, bundles of rope, and finally slabs of limestone lashed together with thick fibre cords. The sun has barely risen, yet the air is already thick and heavy. Sweat beads on your forehead as you heave one last bundle onto the deck. The papyrus creaks, sinking lower beneath the weight. You swallow hard. The Nile looks wide today, wide and deceptively calm. The captain, a leathery man missing 2 teeth and half an ear, grins at you with what might be reassurance or a warning. Stay light on your feet, worker. The river is patient, but not kind. You nod, climbing aboard. The crew pushes off with long poles, guiding the boat into the channel. The water slaps gently against the hull, the current tugging insistently beneath you. You grip the side tightly, eyes darting toward every shadow beneath the surface. Around you, the river's life buzzes. Egrets wade near the shore, picking through reeds. Bright blue kingfishers dart low over the water, flashing like living gems. Of course, there are the crocodiles. You spot one almost immediately, a dark, gliding shape moving effortlessly parallel to your boat, its jagged back surfaces briefly, eyes barely breaking the waterline. You glance at the captain. He doesn't even look up. "Let them watch," he mutters. "Better than letting them get curious." The crew rows in steady rhythm, sweat darkening their linen tunics. The oars scrape through the water in smooth, practiced arcs. The sun climbs higher. The glare off the surface stings your eyes, making the dark shapes beneath even harder to spot. The boat lists slightly with every shift of weight. You try not to think about how thin the papyrus layers feel beneath your feet. A sudden bump jars the boat. Everyone freezes. The captain peers into the murky water, then relaxes. Just a sandbar. The crew resumes rowing, though the tension never fully leaves. Mini rows near you, his face pale with effort. The priest should offer more to Sobek, he grunts between strokes. This river feels angry. You nod. Sobek, the crocodile god, master of these waters, demands constant respect. His shrines dot the riverbanks, where priests regularly leave offerings. Small clay figurines, garlands of lotus flowers, baskets of fish. Whether these gifts truly appease him, historians still argue. From where you sit, watching sharp teeth break the surface of the water, you choose to believe. As the boat rounds a bend, the current quickens. The crew adjusts, compensating for the pull. But then, something shifts. A gust of wind whips across the surface, rippling waves into sudden chop. The boat rocks sharply, and one of the limestone bundles shifts dangerously. The captain shouts, "Steady." You scramble to rebalance the load as the crew fights to keep the vessel straight. The reeds groan under the weight. Another sharp lurch. Water splashes over the edge, soaking your sandals. Then silence again. The current slows. The boat rights itself, creaking ominously, but still floating. The crew breathes as one, panting softly. The captain chuckles hoarsely. A test. Sobek just wanted to remind us. You don't laugh. As the hours drag on, the heat becomes oppressive. The air feels thick, heavy with humidity, your skin coated in sweat and river spray. Dragonflies hover above the water like tiny watchmen. Fish ripple just beneath the surface, flashing silver glimpses. You spot more crocodiles trailing behind, always watching. Suddenly, a flash of movement on the far shore catches your eye. 2 young boys tending goats near the waterline. One steps too close, his sandal slipping in the mud. He stumbles, regaining his balance just as a massive crocodile lunges from the reeds. The boys scream, scrambling up the bank. The beast snaps its jaws but misses. It slides back into the water as quickly as it appeared. The crew watches in grim silence. Manny shakes his head. Sobek is hungry this season. You don't reply. Your stomach knots tightly. Every second on this river feels like a gamble. Finally, as the sun dips lower, the crew spots the quarry's dock, the cluster of wooden posts and tethered barges ahead. You exhale slowly as the boat glides towards safety. The captain grins again. See, the river tests you, but she spares you too. You step off onto solid ground, legs shaky from the constant sway. The limestone cargo is unloaded carefully. Overseers shout orders, scribes tally the delivery, and the workers disperse. Before you head back toward the village, you glance once more at the river. The crocodiles remain silent, floating sentinels. You think of the offerings, the chants, the prayers muttered under breath by every person who sets foot on a boat. Historians still debate whether the fear of Sobek truly shaped policy, temple wealth, or simply folk tradition. But standing here, you know it's real. The gods are always real when they might eat you. As night falls, you return home, your body aching, but your heart strangely light. You survived the river today. The old gods may be pushed aside in stone carvings, but out here, beneath the Aten's blazing eye, Sobek still reigns. And as you lay on your mat under a cloudless sky, you whisper a quiet prayer to both Aten and Sobeka. Because these days, you pray to anyone who might be listening. The season shifts, as seasons do, but not gently. The air feels thicker now, not just with heat, but with the kind of tension that creeps under your skin. The Nile has retreated fully, leaving behind dark, cracked soil, ready for planting. Villagers move like ants across the newly exposed fields, sowing barley and flax into the rich mud. But while the land prepares for life, the people prepare for something far darker. Rumours have become shouts. The court's unrest has boiled into open fear. The Pharaoh's paranoia deepens. Whispers speak of foreign threats, enemies from the north and south, and of conscriptions. Soldiers are needed, always more soldiers. You barely finish your morning meal when the village herald arrives, flanked by soldiers bearing polished copper swords. His voice rises above the low hum of the market. By Pharaoh's command, able-bodied men are summoned for military service. The villagers fall silent. Heads turn, mothers clutch children closer, fathers exchange grim looks. The overseer steps forward, scroll in hand, reading names aloud. Each name feels like a stone dropping into the Nile. Yours comes soon enough. You bow your head. There's no protest. There's no choice. Your wife grabs your arm as you prepare your meager belongings. "How long?" she whispers, eyes wide with fear. "I don't know," you answer truthfully. "They say Nubian raiders grow bold." Historians still debate the true extent of Egypt's military campaigns during times of religious upheaval. Were these foreign threats as dire as proclaimed, or were they used to justify conscription and tighten Pharaoh's grip? To you, it hardly matters. You're going because you've been told to go. By midday, the conscripts gather under the burning sun, their linen tunics already soaked through. The officer inspects the line, his shaved head gleaming, his eyes sharp. His voice carries the clipped confidence of someone far too used to giving orders. "You serve Pharaoh," he announces. "You serve the gods. You serve Aten." The words hang heavy in the air. You march away from the village in a long, winding line. Behind you, your family watches, faces shrinking in the distance. Ahead, the desert stretches, endless and merciless. The first day of training introduces you quickly to military life, if you can call it that. Drills under the punishing sun, hours spent learning formation maneuvers, spear handling, shield practice. The instructors bark commands with little patience for exhaustion or mistakes. At night, you collapse onto rough mats inside simple reed barracks. Your muscles ache in ways stone hauling never prepared you for. Around you, others groan quietly in the dark. You hear prayers whispered to every god imaginable. Aten, of course, but also to old names, Horus, Sekhmet, even Ammon. You whisper your own silent plea to Beth, hoping his fierce little face might ward off disaster. The officers enforce Aten's prominence even here. Morning roll calls begin with sun hymns. The walls of the small barracks display crude carvings of Aten's rays, replacing the familiar faces of older gods. The soldiers obey, but you can sense the unease pulsing beneath the surface. One evening, while repairing your spearhead, Mene sits beside you, speaking in low tones. "They say the priests in Thebes resist still. Pharaoh wants them silenced." You nod, but don't reply. The old temples remain strong in the south. Pharaoh's dream of Aten's singular rule faces stiff roots. Historians continue to argue whether Akhenaten's vision of monotheism took hold widely or struggled against generations of entrenched beliefs. In these barracks, you see the struggle firsthand for men murmuring prayers to forbidden gods while publicly praising Aten under watchful eyes. Your first skirmish comes quickly. Nubian raiders strike a southern trade route, and your unit is dispatched. You march for days across dry, broken hills, every breath filled with dust. When the attack comes, it's sudden and chaotic. Shouts, clashing blades, the sharp twang of arrows slicing through the air. You fight instinctively, more from panic than skill. The Nubian warriors are fierce, their spears quick and deadly. You manage to deflect a strike with your shield, the blow reverberating painfully through your arm. Around you, dust clouds rise, screams cut through the air, and the copper tang of blood mingles with the dry heat. When the fighting finally ends, the surviving raiders flee into the hills. You stand panting, heart pounding, sweat stinging your eyes. A comrade lies nearby, motionless, his face slack, staring blankly at the sky. You force yourself not to look. The officers praise your unit's victory, but the mood remains heavy. You've seen death before, but not like this. Not so close. That night, huddled around a low fire, Mene breaks the silence. "I miss the fields," he says quietly. "Even the stones." You nod. At least the stones don't stab back. The others chuckle bitterly. The officers continue drilling you harder after the battle. New rumours swirl. More raids, possible threats from the Hittites to the north, strange alliances shifting like desert winds. And always, the undercurrent of religious unease. Which priests support Aten? Which whispers secretly to a moon? Which soldiers pray to gods in the dark? One evening, as the sun sets, the officer gathers the men for a final proclamation. The pharaoh prepares his new city, he announces. Akhenaten rises as the only true centre of worship. The old temples will fade. Only Aten remains. The men remain silent, but you feel their tension rise again. The old gods still linger in every breath, every prayer muttered behind cupped hands. Later, lying on your rough mat under a sliver of starlit sky, you stare upward. Orion glimmers brightly, Osiris still watching, despite Athen's earthly rise. The old gods haven't vanished, not in the hearts of men like you. The priests may shift, the pharaoh may demand, but here, beneath the stars, the eternal balance feels unchanged. You whisper quietly into the night, unsure who hears you anymore, Aten, Osiris, or simply the wind. Protect us, all of us. The desert air carries a strange chill tonight as your unit returns from its latest patrol. The winds shift constantly, whispering dry secrets across the dunes. You trudge into the camp, your linen stiff with sweat and dust, legs aching with that familiar leaden heaviness. The soldiers around you move like ghosts, their faces drawn from both fatigue and the constant presence of something even heavier than exhaustion: fear. Rumours have outpaced the marching feet. Whispers swirl that new orders have come, not from the officers, but from priests loyal to Aten himself. Special assignments. Selected soldiers being sent to guard the growing construction of Akhenaten, Pharaoh's grand city, his new horizon. You've heard the stories for weeks, of an entire city rising from barren desert, built entirely to honour Aten's singular light, of artisans carving endless stone blocks, scribes rewriting prayers, and priests composing new hymns to erase the old gods. Historians still argue whether Akhenaten was a sincere act of devotion or an authoritarian experiment in control. But for soldiers like you, it's not a debate. It's your next destination. The announcement comes before dawn, the officer's voice sharp in the cool morning air. Selected men will escort royal caravans to Akhenaten. You've been honoured. The word honoured hangs in the air like dry papyrus curling in the sun. You and many exchange a look. Neither of you feel honoured. The march begins at sunrise. You follow a winding trade road cutting east through stony hills and dry gullies. The land grows more barren with each step. Sparse acacia trees give way to empty plains of crushed rock. Days stretch long under Aten's eye, his disk blazing without mercy. The priests among the caravan chant softly as they walk, praising Aten's rays. You mouth nothing. Your lips are too dry. After several punishing days, the city appears sudden, impossible, unnatural. Akhenaten. Rows of newly built homes gleam pale against the desert backdrop. Wide ceremonial avenues radiate from the central temple like spokes on a great wheel. Enormous pylons rise toward the sky, etched with images of Aten's rays. No faces, no animal-headed gods, only the featureless disk, its arms outstretched, always reaching. The air hums with constant activity. Artisans carve fresh reliefs, labourers drag stones across the sand, scribes move in coordinated flocks, reed pens flashing as they record every detail. The wealth here is staggering lavish villas, bright pigments, polished stone. Yet it feels sterile, as though the land itself hasn't accepted this sudden birth. You're led through the outer gates to a small soldier's barracks on the city's edge. The officer dismisses you with sharp instructions. Your loyalty is to Aten and Pharaoh. There is no other truth here. Many sits beside you that evening, both of you eating dry barley cakes in silence, staring at the city's glowing skyline under the fading sun. It feels empty, Meanie whispers, like the gods are watching from far away. You nod, or refusing to watch at all. Even the night sky feels different here. The stars still shine, but something about Akhenaten seems to repel their familiar comfort. You spot Orion, or is it faintly hanging above the horizon, but distant, detached? You whisper his name under your breath, almost out of habit, unsure whether it's dangerous to even think of him here. The days that follow blur into a strange rhythm. You guard stone deliveries, escort noble visitors, and occasionally oversee work crews. The artisans are nervous, their chisels careful as they carve Pharaoh's likeness receiving Aetern's light. Mistakes bring harsh rebukes. You witness one stonecutter reprimanded harshly after carving an unauthorized image of Ma'at's feather beside Aetern's rays. The error is quickly chipped away, smoothed over as though the old gods never existed. The priests here are different too. Their eyes burn with zeal. Their chants are precise, almost mechanical, lacking the warmth you remember from village temples. Gone are the elaborate mythologies, the layered stories of gods feuding, loving, punishing. In their place, the singular Aten, pure light, faceless, featureless. Historians still debate whether Pharaoh truly believed Aten demanded this level of devotion, or whether the cult served more political aims, centralizing power away from the sprawling priesthoods of Amun, Osiris, and others. You feel the shift tangibly, the erasure of everything familiar. One morning, as you oversee a delivery of sculpted limestone blocks, a noble official approaches. A tall man draped in shimmering linen, his shaved head polished like alabaster. His amulet of Aten swings with each step. "You are from the old villages, yes?" he asks you directly. You stiffen. "Yes, my lord." "Do you find this city strange?" His tone is light, probing. "It is very new, my lord." He smiles faintly, watching you. New is necessary. Pharaoh sees what others cannot. The old gods were heavy, divided, corrupt. Aten brings unity, simplicity, perfection. You bow your head. "Yes, my lord." He lingers a moment longer before walking away. You exhale, realizing your fists were clenched tightly. Later that night, you and many sit outside the barracks, staring at the city's skyline again. The central temple looms, its vast courtyard designed for open-air worship beneath the disk. No closed sanctuaries, no hidden chambers, nothing but open sky. Many shakes his head. Where do the gods go at night, if Aten is the only one? You answer softly, almost afraid of your own words. Maybe that's why it feels so quiet here. The others have left. The quietness gnaws at you. Back home, even in tension, you felt life humming, markets buzzing, fishermen shouting, children laughing near the Nile. But here in Akhenaten, even joy feels rehearsed. Smiles seem too wide, songs too controlled, everything carefully arranged beneath Aten's unblinking eye. One evening, a priest leads a group in the main courtyard, chanting a new hymn composed for Pharaoh himself. You watch from a distance, words floating into the cool air. "O sole God beside whom there is none. You made the earth as you desired. You are one, none exists with you." You glance toward the workers around you. Some murmur the words dutifully, others stare blankly, lips unmoving. You remain silent. The shift is real. The air feels thinner here, not because of the dry desert winds, but because something older and deeper has been drained. As you finally lie down to sleep, you feel the familiar unease settle into your bones again. The old gods have not disappeared entirely. You still feel them, beneath the stones, behind the silence. Watching from far beyond Aten's rigid light, and you wonder, how long can a city this bright stand before the shadows return? Weeks pass, though the days bleed into one another like strokes of a scribe's pen. You fall into the city's rhythm, a strange, sterile pulse under Aten's unwavering gaze. The work never stops. New temples rise, new hymns are sung. The pharaoh himself appears periodically, flanked by his family, standing under Aten's outstretched rays like a living embodiment of divine favour. Yet beneath the surface, unease bubbles. You see it in the labourers' eyes as they haul fresh blocks for unfinished temples. You hear it in the scribes' hurried whispers, the way they glance over their shoulders before daring to murmur the old gods' names. You feel it yourself every time you stand before the massive reliefs, where Aten's rays now reach into every corner of the walls, squeezing out even the smallest images of the old pantheon. One morning, you're assigned to escort a supply caravan delivering cedar wood from Lebanon, luxury timber reserved for Pharaoh's grand halls. The journey back to Akhenaten is uneventful, but upon your return, you find the city tense. Too quiet, even for this place. Captain waves you over before you even unload the cart. "Stay alert," he mutters under his breath. "There's been trouble." You learn quickly that a small group of temple workers was caught reciting prayers to Amun in secret. Amun, the god Pharaoh, seeks to erase entirely. The men have been arrested, their names already scrubbed from temple records. Many pulls you aside later, his voice barely audible. One was a sculptor I knew. His brother used to carve for Osiris. You glance toward the massive Aten temple, and now... Many exhales shakily. They're gone. This is not just about religion. It is power. Total, suffocating control. Historians still argue whether Akhenaten's religious revolution was truly about spiritual devotion, or simply eliminating rivals who had grown too strong in Amun's name. You no longer wonder. The following day, a new decree arrives. The priests announce that all households must surrender personal idols of the old gods. Amulets, figurines, wall paintings, everything. They will be collected and purified. The soldiers are tasked with enforcement. You feel the weight of your spear as you stand at the doorways of villas and modest homes alike. Villagers step forward, reluctantly surrendering carved eyes of Horus, small statues of Bastet, tiny wooden scarab tokens held for generations. One woman hands over a tiny carved Anubis jackal, her fingers trembling as she releases it. "He guarded my father's tomb," she whispers. The priest, collecting the items, offers her a polished smile. Aten needs no guardians. You say nothing. You dare not. When you return to the barracks that night, your hands feel dirty, not from work, but from betrayal. Your own small amulet, a crude scarab carved by your son years ago, still hangs hidden inside your linen belt. You tell yourself you'll surrender it tomorrow. You don't. The purging intensifies. Walls are scraped bare. Names of old gods are chiselled away. Even Pharaoh's ancestors, once praised as favourite of Amun, are rewritten in official records. As if Aten had always been the one and only. During a midday patrol, you overhear two priests arguing quietly. If we erase the past entirely, one hisses, what foundation remains? The other glares. Aten is the foundation. They fall silent when they notice you listening. Later, while guarding a shipment of alabaster jars, you see something you cannot forget. One of the labourers, caught muttering a forbidden hymn to Osiris under his breath, is dragged before the high priest. There is no trial. His tongue is cut out. A brutal warning to any who might dare invoke names not approved. Many watches the scene, face pale. That night he whispers to you in the barracks. Even Aten casts shadows. You nod, but remain silent. What could you say? The old gods may be fading from public view, but they live stronger than ever in your private prayers. The city continues its relentless growth. Grand palaces rise. Statues of the royal family multiply, always with Aten's rays extending like fingers touching only them. Pharaoh, his queen, and their children are depicted larger than life, soaking in divine light while everyone else remains small and secondary. One afternoon you're posted along the temple perimeter during a royal procession. Pharaoh himself appears, radiant beneath his elaborate crown. Queen Nefertiti standing gracefully beside him. Their daughters follow, dressed in flowing linen, adorned with golden discs of Aten. The people bow low. You do the same, forehead nearly touching the hot stone. The priests chant loudly. There is no god but Aten. Pharaoh lives in his light. All life flows from him. You feel the words pressing against you like heavy, invisible hands. It's not that you don't believe in Aten's power. How can you doubt the sun's blazing strength? But you remember the rich, layered world that came before. Osiris ruling the afterlife, Anubis guiding souls, Isis protecting mothers, Bastet warding off evil, Ma'at keeping balance. Haten offers only light-searing, blinding, absolute. As the procession passes, you catch a glimpse of the priests carrying censers of sweet-smelling incense. For a moment, you almost taste the familiar aroma of myrrh and frankincense that once filled your village temple. But here it smells sterile, distant. Later that evening you find yourself standing outside the city wall, staring at the dark horizon where stars begin to emerge. Mene joins you quietly. There's a saying, he whispers, you can build a wall against men, but not against the gods. You both stare at the endless desert, where the old temples still stand, far beyond Akhenaten's reach. The priests of Amun still hold power in Thebes. The names of Osiris and Isis still echo in hidden chambers. Aten may blaze over Akhenaten, but the old gods remain patient. As you lie down under the same stars that have watched Egypt since its beginning, you wonder if they are simply waiting for Pharaoh's light to burn too hot until it consumes itself. You close your eyes, clutching the hidden scarab beneath your tunic. The gods endure. The dry season presses on. Day after day, Aten blazes overhead, his light as sharp as spears. Akhenaten continues its unnatural rise. Palaces gleam white and gold, avenues expand outward, and the priests sing louder, more urgently, as if their voices can hold this fragile world together. But beneath the polished surfaces, you feel the cracks spreading. The barracks feel different now. Empty bunks where familiar faces once slept. More arrests, more disappearances. The purges of the old god's sympathizers have grown bolder. Some labourers vanish overnight. Some soldiers whisper quietly and then say nothing more. You've learned to speak little. Even Mene grows cautious, though the lines in his face deepen with every passing week. Pharaoh believes Aten has no rivals, he says one evening, as you sit outside, sharing a simple meal of onions and flatbread. But the world isn't that simple. You nod slowly. The Nile still rises and falls. The stars still wheel overhead. The old gods breathe beneath it all. Many glances around nervously before whispering, and people still pray to them. The next day, a caravan arrives bearing fresh granite from Aswan. Massive blocks shimmer under the sun, destined for Pharaoh's grand new sanctuaries. You are assigned to supervise the unloading. The work is exhausting, the heat suffocating, but you welcome the labour. It keeps your hands busy and your thoughts quiet. As the crew strains to lower a block from the sled, one labourer loses his grip. The granite slab tips dangerously, slipping free of the ropes. The shouting begins, frantic and sharp. You leap back as the stone crashes down with a deafening crack. The labourer beneath it isn't fast enough. His scream cuts short. The silence afterward is even louder. The priests arrive swiftly. The body is covered. The blood is swept away. But the whispers ripple. An ill omen, one worker mutters. Osiris is angered, says another, too loudly. The priest overseeing the work narrows his eyes and raises his staff. Blasphemy, he shouts. There is only 80. No others exist. The labourers fall silent, heads bowed, but you see it in their eyes. The fear, the simmering tension. That night, the barracks are restless. You hear muffled voices beyond the thin walls. Prayers whispered into fists. Names of forbidden gods carried softly like smoke. And then, an announcement. The Pharaoh calls for another festival, the officer declares the following morning. Celebration of Aten's eternal light. All will attend. The preparations begin immediately. The city is dressed in new banners of red and gold. Scribes record fresh hymns praising Aten's endless giving. The priests practice elaborate dances beneath the open-air temple, rehearsing each step beneath Aten's fierce rays. The day arrives with oppressive heat. The crowds gather in the vast courtyard. You stand among them, your spear at your side, eyes forward, heart heavy. The temple's towering pylons reflect the sun like mirrors, forcing you to squint. Pharaoh appears, carried beneath a canopy of fine linen. Queen Nefertiti walks beside him, radiant as always, their daughters trailing behind like living symbols of Aten's favour. People bow low as the priests chant, O you who rise in perfection, sole creator, giver of breath, all things live through your rays. The priests' voices rise higher, the drums beating faster. Incense fills the air. The smell is sweet but overwhelming, making your head swim. The entire city hums like a hive, beautiful and suffocating all at once. Pharaoh raises his arms to Aten's disk, and the people chant as one. But beneath their voices, you sense what no one dares say aloud. This feels forced, fragile, as if the very ground beneath Akhenaten could crack open. That evening, after the festival, you sit quietly by the outer wall again. The desert stretches endlessly beyond. Many joins you, lowering himself onto the cool stone. We can't keep this up forever, he says softly. Light without shadow. It's not balance. You glance at him, then up at the sky. The stars return, as they always do, unbothered by the day's frenzy. Orion shines calmly above the horizon. The balance will return, you whisper. It always does. Not long after, news reaches the city. Quietly at first, then in scattered, nervous bursts. Pharaoh Akhenaten has fallen ill. His health fades. The priests do not say it openly, but you hear the whispers in dark corners. Without his voice, Aten's dominance trembles. Historians still debate what followed, whether Akhenaten's reforms unravelled swiftly or slowly, whether his successors quietly reinstated the old gods, or if resistance had always simmered just beneath the surface. You live these questions, moment by moment. Weeks later, you are dismissed from your post. The soldiers are sent home, some promoted, some replaced, some simply discarded. You and many pack your meagre belongings and begin the long walk back to your village. The desert swallows Akhenaten behind you. When you finally return home, the Nile greets you like an old friend, slow, steady pulse unchanged. The fields shimmer with new growth. The small village shrine, long neglected, shows signs of quiet repair. Familiar faces offer cautious smiles. Inside your hut, you unwrap the small scarab you kept hidden all these months. The carving is worn smooth now from your constant touch. You place it gently on the household altar, beside a simple wooden figure of Beth. Your wife joins you, laying a hand on your shoulder. The gods forgive us, she says softly. Outside, the temple priests sing once again, not only to Aten, but to Ra, Osiris, Isis, and Maut. The old gods breathe again, not as conquerors, but as quiet survivors. You stand at your doorway that evening, watching the stars blink overhead. The wind rustles through the palm trees, carrying the steady croak of frogs along the Nile's edge. And as the cool night settles around you, you finally exhale. The world has shifted, but you are home. You have endured. The gods endure. The night deepens, and the stars glow brighter as you lie once more on your simple mat. The air is cooler now, wrapping gently around you like the linen folds once wrapped around Pharaoh's long-forgotten mummies. The flickering oil lamp nearby casts soft golden halos on the mud-brick walls. the shadows dancing lazily across familiar faces of tiny carved gods that have quietly reclaimed their place. Your breathing slows. The distant hum of insects along the river merges with the gentle lapping of the Nile's waters against its banks, like a mother's slow, rhythmic heartbeat. The worries of pharaohs and priests fade, their voices distant echoes swallowed by the silence of time. The old gods, patient and unbothered by mortal pride, breathe once more in the hush of your village. Your fingers gently trace the scarab amulet resting by your side. Its surface is smooth now, but its weight is comforting, an anchor to all you've endured. A symbol that life continues, as steady and unrelenting as the river itself. The breeze stirs the palm fronds, carrying with it the rich scent of damp earth and distant fires. The world feels wide, but not threatening anymore. Just endless, familiar, balanced. You allow your eyes to close, letting your body sink into the softness of your mat. The stars continue their ancient wheel above, watching you as they always have, as they always will. And somewhere, far away, beneath sand and stone, the tombs sleep too, silent, unbothered, eternal. The story ends here. Close your eyes, drift deep, sweet dreams.